Okay, so you reached further than I did. Did you put the title in? We're live already.
No title.
We could edit that later.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean it is 6:59, so you can
Oh,
start doing your thing.
hold on. It says setting up webinar. Waiting for it to actually go live.
Huh?
It says setting your webinar for Facebook Live. All right.
No,
Hi
we're
guys,
live.
I'm back.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi, how are you?
Welcome back.
Yeah, so you're ready in what, 2 minutes?
Well, Reese, how are we looking on your end?
Making sure it went live now.
Well, Zoom is indicating that we are
Just
live.
tell me, like, I've cleared my calendar, so just let me know.
Oh, that's perfect. That is perfect. Okay, we are live. We are live.
Apparently, we are live.
We are live. So, we are live.
Ira, he's
Yes.
not on the screen.
Huh?
He's not on the screen.
I see. I realize he is not on the screen.
Not on the screen?
No, your video is not.
I'm seeing the photo of me.
We're seeing that too, but for some reason you're not being broadcast.
All right, hold on. Ira, I'm going to make you about the host, and you're going to add it.
He's added.
You're now the host. So he's showing on Zoom. We're trying to get him on Facebook. Premier Brantley, we're adding you to the Facebook Live as we speak, okay? Just stand by.
All right.
Okay, well, Zoom is not playing ball. Zoom is not playing ball with us.
So I'm not appearing what on the screen for those who are watching?
No, you're not.
Okay.
They could hear you.
They can hear you.
Can they at least hear me?
Yeah, they can hear you.
So I don't need to see my ugly face. That's okay.
Remember you used to talk about how handsome you were, man.
No, man, not me.
Okay. Well, for some reason the video, your picture is not showing up, but we could get started with the show. I'll do the
You want me to come out and try and come back in? Would that make a difference?
That wouldn't make a difference.
It would not.
It would not. It would not make a difference. The software, I think, is buggy because there is an option to hide non-video callers, and that is not selected. So I don't know why it's not showing.
Okay. Hey, give me options here. Start video.
All right. Can you start video?
And see what happens?
If you start video, then you will be seen live and direct.
Okay, well, I've hit start video, so let me see what happens with that.
Okay.
Have you seen me?
Not yet.
Hey, I'm about to go on a live program here and think. Can I call you right back? Okay. All right. Yeah, so the host has asked me to start video. So I'm starting my video.
And now we're making change. Okay, here you are.
Can you see me now?
Yeah. Here you are.
All right.
All right. We're just waiting for that to translate over to Facebook. But let us get started. It is 7:03, and good night.
Okay.
Good night to each and everyone who has tuned in to our special Tuesday night edition of Real Talk Corner. Tonight we have the Honorable, the Premier of Nevis, Mark A.G. Brantley. Mark Brantley, we've been trying to get you on this show for such a long time. This feels like a major accomplishment for us right now. I just want to say that up front, and we're delighted to have you on the show tonight. And as usual, we like to start the show with our guests telling the people who they are from a different standpoint. So people see you in the spotlight often. So what they may not know is your background, maybe what got you into politics, what got you into law, let's just hear a little about that.
Okay, well, can you hear me properly?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can.
Okay, so I want to thank you first of all for the opportunity. You are correct. It's been a while in the making, but I'm happy that I'm here tonight and can have a conversation with you and with your many viewers online. What set me on the path? I'm not quite sure. I think that I've had a lot of influences and influencers in my life. My parents, certainly, they always pushed us to strive for excellence in all that we try to do. Come from a very, very poor background, like most Nigerians. So my story is not unique in that regard. I was born in a little house down Hanley's Road. And then at some point, when I was about 8 or 9, we moved to Brownhill. And so I grew up sort of between Hanley's Road and Brownhill. And did fairly well in school, got some opportunities, won a scholarship to go and study law. I always wanted to be a lawyer. I don't know where that came from, but I always wanted to be a lawyer. And did the best I could. I did law in Barbados, initially at the University of the West Indies, Cayville. I did law at the Norman Manley Law School. I graduated first in class at Norman Manley, and largely on the back of that, I was able to win a scholarship. And I went to University of Oxford in England, where I did postgraduate work. But I always wanted to be in Nevis. So after I was done, I got several job offers in London, in New York, even in the BVI, but I opted to come home. So that in a nutshell is my story. At some point, I decided to try my hat in this political thing. I'm not a politician, I didn't study politics, but I'm involved in it now since 2006. And we'll see how it goes. It's now been 14 years, so it's been a long time. So I think I'm a veteran politician, even though it's not a long time.
I would say you are. I would say you're a veteran politician. I would definitely say that. Reese?
As you said, you went to law school. When you compare the transition between law and politics, where do we go between there?
First of all, you make a lot more money as a lawyer. I could tell you that. So for me to leave into politics, I took a vow of poverty and made that leap to enter politics because law is really a medium where you can get financial reward depending on if you're good at it and if you clearly get the kind of clientele that can pay. So I think that was a huge transition. It led to a significant reduction in one's income. But the other transition, I think, is that you become a public figure. And so I read things about me every day. I see opinions about me that from people whom I don't know, I've never met, but who have very deep-seated views and opinions about who I am and what I do. So that's always an interesting transition to that sort of public life. But I think the biggest thing for me is the impact it has had on the family, because of course, the focus is not just on me, it's on my wife, it's on my children, it's on my wider family. So that has also taken some adjusting. But as I said, it's been 14 years and I think that it's been more good than bad. And, as somebody reminded me recently, this is what I signed up for. So I'm not too fussed about that.
Right. How is your family holding up during this difficult time that the whole world is facing?
Mm-hmm. You asked me how am I holding up? Is that what you asked?
Your family, how are you and your family holding up?
Well, we're doing quite well. All things considered. My children are studying in the UK. They were able to come home. I'm thankful to have them home. And so we have been doing what we've been asking others to do: stay at home, take all the necessary precautions, wash hands, cough in our elbows if we must cough or sneeze, wear a mask if we're going out in public, practice social distancing. But most of us stay at home. And I think it has allowed not just us, but Nigerians on a whole and Kititians as well, to reconnect with family, to sort of relearn, if you will, some of the things that we used to take for granted, telling stories, reading, watching a movie together, things that we used to say we're too busy to do. we now find the time to do. And I think that that's perhaps the good side of these lockdowns. It has forced us to rekindle our family connections and to do the best we can in such our concern, our spouses. With that, and I'm grateful that we are well. Needless today, we got confirmation that our 4 COVID cases are recovered. And so as I speak to you, Nevis has no cases of COVID and we have no pending tests.
Okay,
so
that is excellent.
98 tests that we have done, 94 were negative. The 4 that were positive have been confirmed that they are recovered. And so we are very grateful. Grateful to God because he has not abandoned us, and grateful, of course, to our COVID task force on Nevis. Dr. Judy Nisbet has really led that with distinction. And so we're very happy to all of our frontline people and the work that they've done. So I'm very pleased. I'm sort of breaking the news on your show that it's all over Facebook and stuff now that the 4 cases have recovered on Nevis. We still have, I think, 3 cases that are yet recovered, but again, we're making good progress. That is federally. We have still 3 more cases, but we're making good progress, and for that, we're grateful.
That's perfect. That is excellent news. So yes, you have heard it here from the Premier. Nevis is COVID-free as of, I guess, today. Am I hearing a feedback here?
Yeah.
Well, we are that. We are that today. I'm hopeful that it remains. We have to be cautious, and we still can't throw caution to the wind. We don't know what tomorrow will bring, but I think as of this hour, speaking to you, it's a good feeling to know that our 4 residents have recovered fully.
All right, beautiful, beautiful. So, Premier Brantley, as you said, the four cases have recovered. So where are we in terms of lockdown? Where are we in terms of the 24-hour curfew? Is that going to still be carried on to the week, or?
Well, the week that is ahead of us, this week that we're in, we have already the announcement by the Prime Minister that each day this week is, except the month, of course, each day is going to be a limited curfew day. So the curfew is going to still be in effect at nights, and that goes until Friday. And then we will have to have a discussion at the federal level, bearing in mind that the state emergency is largely dealt with at the federal level. We'll have a discussion at the federal cabinet to determine what happens come weekend and the following week. As I said, would be premature for us to declare victory. We are on the road, I think, to victory. But, just as in politics, you have to wait until the last box is counted. So in this thing, we have to wait and be patient so that we don't jump out and start to reopen the country too early and then have what is referred to as a second wave. So we have to be sensible about this. And I would anticipate that some restrictions will continue for some period of time until we get the all clear.
Gotcha.
All right. That is nice. With that said, there's also you have a very large portfolio as the Premier of Nevis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you also are a federal minister. Now you have to be a boss at time management, right? So can you take us into a day-to-day sitting with the Premier of Nevis and the federal minister? How do you manage to handle such a heavy load?
First of all, I work 7 days a week. I think that, it is not the kind of job where on Friday afternoon you check out and you check back in on Monday morning. I use weekends a lot to catch up in terms of correspondence, to catch up in terms of reading material, to make sure that I'm fully up to speed on what I need to deal with, because weekends you normally don't have meetings. And so I would use that time. Although on Saturdays, I do try to find some time to go into the community, because I'm still a politician at the end of the day. So I try and manage my time very tightly. The answer, however, is twofold. One, I have excellent staff, both on St. Kitts and on Nevis, who help me immensely. And two, I depend very heavily on technology.
All right.
So wherever I am in the world, whichever island I happen to be on, I'm in touch. And so it is not difficult to find me. It is not difficult to get my attention on a particular matter. And that is how I do it. In terms of a week time, as I said, I work 7 days a week, but on Mondays, I tend to go to St. Kitts for cabinet over there. That's normally fixed for Monday. Wednesday, cabinet on Nevis is normally fixed. And then I go to St. Kitts usually on Fridays as well. So I'm physically, most times in St. Kitts on Mondays and Fridays. And then, of course, during the week, if necessary. The rest of the time, I'm on Nevis. And so I juggle sort of between both offices. But mostly I work via technology. And so my permanent secretary in St. Kitts, she and I are in regular touch, regular contact. She lets me know what I need to deal with, and I deal with it accordingly. As you know, my job also requires some level of travel because I represent our country in terms of its diplomacy. And I'm quite pleased and proud of our record in the last 5 years in terms of our diplomatic effort. I think, as many of you would know, we have expanded our diplomatic footprint significantly into places like Africa and other places where we have not had traditional allies. And in addition, we've expanded significantly our travel-free regime, our visa-free regime. When we lost travel-free, visa-free to Canada, I think a lot of people despaired. But we have worked very hard on that. We have not yet got it back. But I think we've made progress to the point where Canada is now coming to St. Kitts Nevis to collect our biometrics at their expense. As opposed to people having to travel to Trinidad or to Barbados.
Do you have like a time frame in which you think we would be able to travel to Canada visa free?
That is really difficult to say for the simple reason that clearly that is a matter in the hands of the Canadians. What I can say is that we have not taken it off our front burner. We continue to lobby very hard. In fact, I was in Canada, I believe it was 2018, and I went to what they call Parliament Hill there. And in a single day, I met with perhaps 8 or 10 parliamentarians, making the case for St. Kitts and Nevis's visa-free status to be restored. They were not at that point prepared to do that. And they, in fact, advised that they were introducing now this biometrics gathering mechanism where we would have to travel now to Trinidad to give biometrics. So you could just imagine a family of 4 wanting to go to Toronto to visit for a funeral, for a wedding, or just for a holiday, having to find 4 tickets to Trinidad, no guarantee they will get the visa. And then when they come back, if they get the visa, then finding money to go to Canada. So we told them that we thought that was not the greatest of ideas. And eventually we lobbied very hard for them to start to come to us to collect the biometrics here. Initially, they resisted, saying that it was not a good idea. But I was very, very happy that last year at the United Nations, they made the announcement in some meetings we had there. And in fact, credited St. Kitts and Nevis for being the ones who agitated and lobbied. So the entire Caribbean now is benefiting. So a lot of other islands who do not have a Canadian embassy are also now benefiting from what they call the itinerant biometrics gathering. So I'm very happy that our efforts were able to give some relief, not quite where we want to be, but certainly some relief to our people, not having now to spend and to travel to go to Trinidad or to Barbados, as the case may be.
All right. And Nevis also boasts that it is the birthplace of Alexander Hamilton. Have you ever tried in bringing the U.S. Embassy to the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis?
Have I ever tried in bringing? I'm sorry, you.
The U.S. Embassy.
I didn't hear the question. Well, that is a matter that is under active discussion, I am told, in the U.S. Congress, because there are some who are of the view that the U.S. needs to expand its footprint and to have a presence in these islands. I think you guys should be old enough to remember that there was a time when there was actually an embassy in Antigua.
Yes.
But then they retreated. And managing, as Canada is doing, everything from Barbados. Canada has recently announced that it is expanding. So Canada, I think, is now seeking to open sort of satellite offices in Antigua, I think in St. Lucia, St. Vincent, I believe. And we have been lobbying them to say that we must do likewise. Forgive me, it wasn't Canada. I'm sorry. I think it's the UK has done that.
Oh, the UK.
The UK has opened offices, yes, in some of these other, because UK also only had a high commissioner in Barbados. We are, of course, urging the US to do likewise. We think St. Nevis is an ideal location because of where we are geographically, and that I believe that play a significant role in the region, particularly in the OECS sub-region. And clearly we have the presence of certain important institutions like the central bank here. We have some embassies here already. And I do believe that in time, we should see the move of the US and Canada and others to set up here as well. But that is something we continue to ask for. But again, that's a decision that they will have to take.
All right.
All right. So, Premier Brantley, as you said, you're a federal minister and you're also the Premier of Nevis.
Yes.
As we have heard via the NRP party.
Yes, my friends in the NRP.
Yes.
Yes.
You handling both portfolios, both local and federal, and they're saying that they would like you to handle one. What do you say to them in terms of that?
Well, I say that that is a nonsense argument, and here's it's a nonsense argument. The founder of NRP, Sir Simeon Daniel, handled both portfolios. He was Premier of Nevis, and he was at the same time Minister of Finance for St. Kitts and Nevis in the Kennedy Simmons administration, the first administration. Ivor Stevens, an NRP stalwart, was minister both in Nevis, Minister of Public Works. I think he was also Minister of Works in St. Kitts as well, simultaneously. Those are the NRP stalwarts of old. More recently, we have had Joseph Parry, who played a role both federally and locally. The difficulty that I think the NRP has found itself in is that they have not been able to convince the people of Nevis that they can fulfill both roles, because they have tried. And sometimes when I hear them pontificating, I say, but why doesn't somebody remind them of their history? Not only have they had their founders and their principal people playing both roles historically, but others have tried. For example, my first election, when the late great Malcolm Richard passed, I was thrust into this politics thing on the deep end, was a by-election in 2007. You know who was my opponent in that election?
Hensley Daniel.
And Hensley Daniel at the time was what?
Federal minister.
No, he was a deputy premier of Nevis.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right? But he ran against me for a federal seat. The people said to him, Hensley, not this time. And so he was, that was 2007. We then had a federal election in 2010. Hensley Daniel was still deputy premier. He ran against me again for that federal seat. And again, he was unsuccessful. Patrice Nisbet has run time and time and time again. I've forgotten the number of times now. Both federally, where he has been successful, and he has run locally to try and get the local seat as well. The people have said to him, we give you the federal, we're not going to give you the local. We don't think you can handle both. The people said to Hensley, we give you the local, we will not give you the federal. We don't think you can handle both. Others have run. Victor J. Martin, one of the NRP stalwarts, tried to run in a federal election, was unsuccessful. You have Roberto Hector, now NRP leader. He tried to run in a federal election, was unsuccessful. So you find in a way that because of their lack of success, they have now said it's wrong. And I'm saying, but that can't be an argument for saying it is wrong, because you have had an entire history of your party of seeking both offices. It's just that the people of Nevis do not believe that they can do the job. In my case, the people have been kind to me, and I have been elected federally and locally. In the case of Vance Amry, they've been kind to him. And in the case of Malcolm Gishard, of blessed memory, they were also kind to Malcolm. Other than that, we have seen nobody else who the people have sought to say, listen, we're going to invest in you because we think you have what it takes.
Okay.
And on our side as well, we've had people like Gene Harris, Nurse Gene. We've had people like Alexis Jeffers, who have also tried and have succeeded locally, but not federally. So it's something that is common practice for the political parties on Nevis. And that is why I, for one, continue to be confused at this big chatter that they're having about doing two jobs. I will actually get into some other things. I have said that this is a time to fight the COVID, and I'm not going to get too political. But very shortly, I'll put on my boots, and when that happens, I will be sharing some information with the public. Because, for example, I've heard a big thing said, Mark Brantley is getting 2 salaries, and that is improper. But what if I were to tell you and your listeners that there's somebody on the NRP ticket right now who not only got 1 salary, 2 salary, got 4.
Got 4 salaries.
4. If you don't want to say salary, say pay. 4 different pay.
Mm-hmm.
But they are pontificating, saying that it is wrong for you to collect what is budgeted and lawfully provided for you in Nevis and budgeted and provided for you in St. Kitts. But as I said, the stats will come when the boots go on.
Well, in speaking, with keeping in salary, we must commend you on you foregoing your salary. We have seen reports of you foregoing 100% of your salary. The question that is floating around now is, was that both salaries that you foregoed?
No, not both. I decided to forego the larger of the two, and that is my salary and benefits as Premier, because the Premier of Nevis is paid more than an ordinary minister on St. Kitts. Okay. So the Premier of Nevis' salary is on par with the Deputy Prime Minister on St. Kitts. And so I have foregone that, 100% of that. So I'm still collecting a federal salary that I would ordinarily collect. But that salary is now being put almost entirely towards my grocery relief program that we have started. And I must say I'm very pleased because members of the public have responded. So we put up the first 13,500, and today we were able to create vouchers for almost $23,000 worth of groceries. So people have stepped up with us, and we're very grateful. And we're not going to deliver anything to anybody. We're not going to deliver anything to anybody, any green bag. We're not going to put any notes in there to say vote CCM, and we're not going to engage in any politicking. We think this is a time when we must genuinely look out for people. So we've decided just to do a voucher, and those people will go in a dignified way and shop for what they want.
All right. That is actually the first I'm hearing about that program.
Yes.
So I commend you on that. You know, that sounds like a great initiative. And how do people go about getting the vouchers, by the way?
Well, the vouchers, what we have done, we've used various groups in the community who have sort of, how should I put it, suggested our recipients. We're dealing with people who don't have an income. We're dealing with people who might be elderly or infirm and who don't have the support clearly of family. A lot of our people have lost jobs and are therefore out of work and with no income. So we're seeking to help those first. And so that is our hungry during this COVID-19 pandemic. And I think we're well on the way to achieving that. And this is a program that we've said will run for at least 3 months, and then we'll reassess at the end of 3 months.
Mm-hmm. And also at the beginning of the show, you mentioned that stepping into the public arena was like a step into poverty. Are you saying that you no longer benefit from your law firm currently?
Well, my law firm currently really sustains itself. I'm not a part of it, I'm not there, and yes, I don't get a benefit from it because it really, the way things are there, it really tries to sustain itself. And I've said to the colleagues there that that is their role, to pay for the lights and keep the lights on, as they say, make sure the staff are paid. So my law firm is not a money maker for me, no.
Mm-hmm. So you are 100% hands off of your law firm today?
I'm sorry. I missed that. I'm sorry.
You are 100% hands off of your law firm.
Well, I wouldn't say 100% because there have been times when they require an injection of money and I've had to deal with that. There are times when there are business decisions to be made, for example, hiring a new lawyer, for example, and the partners will get my opinion on it. But in terms of legal work, I have nothing to do with that at all.
All right. So, so how would you respond to accusations of conflict of interest, where there's chatter that your law firm funnels government work, you funnel work to your law firm?
Well, when there's a chatter, and I often say to persons that there is a lot of chatter of many things, but present the evidence. As far as I know, Daniel Brantley is one and has been one of the leading law firms, not just in St. Kitts Nevis, but in the region. And Daniel Brantley, as far as I know, has one pseudo-government entity, and that is Nevlec, the electricity company. And that is a company that they represented since 2004. I think that's important, that Daniel Brantley represented Nevlec since 2004. I got into politics in 2006, and I got into government in 2013. So I think the history is important in terms of when people say, oh, you send work to your law firm. That work was with the law firm and being done at the law firm since 2004, before I got into politics. Beyond Daniel Brantley, I'm not aware that there's any government entity. I'm sorry, beyond Nevlec, forgive me. There's any government entity for which Daniel Brantley does any legal work.
All right, Reese.
All right, Premier Brantley. So we have been hearing that on the 15th of May, government will be dissolved. Well, what is that about? Can you explain that to us? The whole government being dissolved and stuff.
Well, that's a constitutional matter. Well, it's a constitutional matter. What happens, of course, is that the Constitution gives Parliament a particular lifespan. And the Constitution says that the Prime Minister can call an election, dissolve and call an election at any time during that lifespan. But the Constitution puts some limits to say that 90 days after the first sitting of the first Parliament, after the government takes office, right, you must have an election. So the life of Parliament ends on the anniversary of the first sitting of the Parliament. In this case, our first sitting was in May of 2015. So May of 2020 will be 5 years, and that's it. Parliament dissolves automatically. So at that point, therefore, the Prime Minister no longer has the usual power of a Prime Minister to dissolve and call it as he wishes. It is dissolved automatically. However, the date now would have to be within 90 days. So he can still fix that date within the 90 days. But what we do know is that you can't go beyond the days unless there are some extenuating circumstances. And the Constitution of things like, if St. Kitts Nevis is at war, then that might be a circumstance where you can extend the life of the Parliament. But I think that the conventional wisdom would suggest that we will have an election before August.
All right. So I'm taking that the government is doing everything in its power to ensure that we do have an election before August.
Well, I would think that that is the case. I have not had a discussion with the Prime Minister specifically on that matter, but I think that we are guided by the Constitution. The rule of law here, as you know, is critical, and we will have to comply with the constitutional requirements. This COVID situation, I think, has intervened in a way because, for example, I was ready to rumble. You know, the Big Blue machine was coming out the garage on the day when they said there's lockdown. We had to, you know, reverse and park it up. So we understand that that is the case, but you know, we're ready to go. We're ready to rumble. So as soon as the health people give us the all clear, you know, it's time to roll.
Does oh, you have something?
Premier Brantley, we have a question in the comments that I want to ask you. This question comes from Aisha Budgeon.
Sure.
and it says, will overseas voters be allowed to vote, seeing that we are dealing with this current COVID-19 situation?
Well, overseas voters have a right to vote. Whether they can come as a physical matter will depend, of course, again, on what the health authorities are saying. Even if St. Kitts and Nevis reopens in terms of its local economy,
yes,
I would anticipate that the last thing that we will open would be our ports. That ought to be the last, simply because many of our people, many of our visitors are coming from areas like the UK and the US, where, as you know, there's still a very real problem with COVID. So to my mind, it would be dangerous to open your ports to say accepting flights from New York when the situation in New York is what it is. Yes. So I anticipate that, depending on when the election is called, it might well be that our ports continue to be closed. And if that is the case, then certainly the right of people overseas to vote might be impacted. But I do not know what the Prime Minister is thinking in terms of a date, so we'll have to wait and see what he says. What I can tell you is that my own view, and the view of the CCM, is that every citizen ought to have the right to vote in their country. And that has always been our view, whether you happen to be in St. Martin or Timbuktu. You have a right to vote because your neighbor Stringberry here. And we have said, and we have made no bones about it, that our party's position is that you cannot disenfranchise our people. We marched about it in Nevis. We went to court about it in Nevis. We were successful, and that has been our position. And so wherever our people are, I consider them to be Kittitians and divisions. You all know that many of us went away for different reasons. Yes. My father of blessed memory lived in the UK. Then he moved to the US. He lived abroad for almost 40 years. But he always said he was in a vision. And he always said he plans one day to come home. And he was eventually able to do so. And I feel that we ought not to diminish in any way the Nivisionness or Kittitianness of somebody because they happen to be overseas. And that has been my position. That is the CCM's very clear position on that matter. So whether they will be able to vote, that will depend on what the Prime Minister does, and that will depend on the advice of the health officials and whether or not our borders are open. But I support their right to vote, and that has been a consistent position.
All right. I would like to back up a little on when you said that the Constitution allow us to pause an elections in the event of a war, right? I think it says if Her Majesty is at war.
Yes.
Is it a war with another nation, or can the COVID war be used in this case?
I think that would be a matter for the lawyers to argue over. My own sense is that Her Majesty being at war means exactly what I think you and I would take it to mean, that you're fighting against somebody.
Yeah.
Right? Antigua has invaded, Montserrat has invaded, and we have a war going on, right? The battle and the fight against COVID has been described in our language as a war, but I think that language is metaphoric rather than language which is really indicative of armed conflict. Okay. I think war to my mind means armed conflict, but I could understand if lawyers would want to argue over it. I mean, my own sense is that let's get on with the election. Let's give the people an opportunity to vote. I think our people already know what they're going to do. My own experience with our citizenry, they know what they're going to do. So let's.
I think
once we get to go ahead and they all clear from our health professionals, I think that we ought not to rush. But once we get the all clear, I think we should be willing to go and do what we need to do.
All right. Reese, do you have a question?
Well, at this point, no. So we'll just keep going further along. Because we were talking about we touched on the COVID-19 situation, and there's a question I wanted to ask you about that. With how the COVID-19 situation is and closing of ports, do we plan on pushing agriculture in the future? Can we establish more of an agricultural departments to get more stuff going? Can we be more self-sufficient, self-reliant?
I think we can be. I have said publicly that one of the lessons I think COVID has taught us is that we must be able to feed ourselves, because we have come to a situation in this country where if tropical doesn't come in on a weekly basis to bring our food, we're in trouble. And I think that St. Kitts and Nevis both have arable land. We have lots of land available. St. Kitts had a significant portion of land under sugar. That land is no longer under sugar. And if you drive through St. Kitts, you see a lot of it just there, lying there. I feel that it's time for us to do more insofar as agriculture is concerned. So what we've done on Nevis, because on Nevis we recognized very early that food security was going to be critical. And so in addition to the stimulus package, which the Prime Minister would have announced, we have done some things in Nevis to stimulate farming. So for example, we provided free water for farmers for 6 months. We provided free seeds, free seedlings, free fertilizer. We've provided free labor, and we are doing the land preparation with the plowing and all that also for free. At the abattoir, to encourage the animal farmers, we have waived most of the fees at the abattoir so as to reduce their costs of bringing animals there for slaughter. In relation to fishers, we took the unprecedented decision to give each fisher a roll of fish pot wire for free and 50% discount on subsequent rolls. So we have tried to do something for our farmers, our crop farmers, our animal farmers, and our fish.
What about
an effort to promote more agriculture?
Okay, sorry, you cut out a little bit there, but what about the monkey situation? What is your government doing to assist the farmers with the monkey situation? Are you providing any like electrical fencing subsidy or anything of that sort? Because
the monkey situation and the donkey situation to some extent, both are. I can tell you that the Ministry of Agriculture has a plan. They are executing that plan. And we recognize that we'll have to find a way to degrade the population of both monkeys and donkeys on the island, because they're real pests in terms of agriculture. We can't say we're serious about food security and allow that problem to go unchecked. So they are working towards their plan in relation to the monkeys and the donkeys. And I believe that over time, people will see that the populations are degraded. That is what we see.
You said over time. Do you have an exact time frame?
Well, I do not have a time frame because it's an ongoing process, but it is a process that we're engaged in. I've had some discussions with our Deputy Premier, the Honorable Alexis Jeffers, Minister of Agriculture, very hands-on, very, very proactive. And I'm assured that the plan that they have is working and they are at it every day.
What exactly is the plan?
Well, as I said, we're trying to degrade the population.
Sterilization?
We're trying to reduce the population of monkeys and donkeys on the island. So, it's one thing to say you're deployed. Well, no, not sterilization. We're trying to rid the island of some of the monkeys and donkeys that we have. We have an overpopulation. And so just in major countries like the United States, where, at national parks there, they have seasons where you can cull deer, you can cull buffalo, bison, whatever the case may be, because if not, they will overrun the place because they have no natural predators. Similarly here, the monkey population has exploded because other than the few people who will eat monkey meat, the truth is they have no predators. So they have grown and grown in terms of their numbers, and they're creating a serious hazard to our farmers and a serious, negative for food security. So we are putting all these wheels are in motion at the same time, in tandem. I should say, because I neglected to say that the relief that we extended was also extended, which is unusual, and I think groundbreaking for us, to what we call backyard farmers.
Oh, okay.
So if you were doing a little farming in your backyard, you also benefited from things like free seeds and free seedlings and things of that nature. So it wasn't just the commercial farmers or the registered farmers, but also the person who wanted to plant a little garden. We benefited them as well. And based on what I've been advised, the uptake has been good. In fact, I was told last week that because we acted early, that people are already reaping some early crops like lettuce and things like that, since that would have been planted since this COVID-19 pandemic hit us.
All right. So agriculture is under the portfolio of the Honorable Alexis Jeffers. So hopefully Alexis Jeffers can sit with us one time and we could ask him some deeper questions on agriculture. And but for you're under your portfolio, you have the Ministry of Health.
Yes.
Very important. I mean, I can't say anything else about health. Everyone know what health means to everyone. Health is wealth. So what do you say to the people that say that you are failing as a health minister?
Well, it depends on who people you're talking to.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who will say I'm failing at everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? But that's the nature of democracies. Everybody has an opinion. I think that the results in health are there. The fact that we had only 4 COVID cases on EVIS and that all 4 have now recovered. Yes, that was by the grace of God, but it also was by the proactive and sometimes difficult decisions taken by our health professionals. We must give them credit. And I think a lot of times people in trying to attack me end up attacking them. Because I've heard the critics say, for example, oh, people only go up to the hospital to die. But Mark Brantley isn't a doctor. He doesn't work at the hospital. Doctors and nurses who are qualified, who give of themselves in difficult circumstances are the ones working at the hospital. So when you refer to the hospital as a morgue where people go to die in an effort to gain political hate against Mark Brantley, you're actually indicting the professionals who work there. Okay. Who give their life and their effort there. So I, in response, I would say that I think, and let's bear in mind as well, that while I am the senior minister of health, the day-to-day runnings of health are done by the Honorable Hazel Brandy Williams, not by me, because she's a junior minister charged with health and gender. And I think she has done a commendable job. I think that health is always a difficult ministry for any country because you could get 100 things right. The one thing that goes wrong is what people are going to talk about. So you never hear about the hundreds of people who had successful surgeries at the hospital. You hear about the one where something went wrong. And that now becomes the poster child for all that is wrong at the hospital and in the health system. But the hundreds that come through every week and every month, you don't hear anybody saying, well done to the health professionals. So in response, I would say that I think our effort, we always need more money for health. Even rich countries in the world, as we see, say, in New York and London and those places, with all their resources, when something like COVID happens, they're under pressure, not enough beds, not enough equipment, etc. We as a small developing island, we recognize the same limitations, but I think we have done fairly well. I think we're now embarking on a significant investment. The largest healthcare in Nevis is the wing that we're doing at the Alexandra Hospital. That I think when it's done is going to be a significant step forward in terms of our delivery of healthcare. We have done things, for example, at every clinic now throughout the villages, all of them are backup generators. Because believe it or not, we used to have things like medication that would spoil because you lost power and the clinics didn't have backup generator. All of them now have in the villages around the island. We have hired additional doctors. We have hired additional staff. We have nurses here from the Philippines who have come to work with us. And we are seeking to provide the necessary support for our doctors and our nurses. And I think that I commend them. They do a very, very important job sometimes in very difficult circumstances. And their performance in relation to COVID, I think, has been stellar, commendable.
So are we adequately staffed at the hospital right now in terms of doctors and nurses?
I think we are, but we continue, of course, to encourage our young people to look for a career in nursing. Because one of the things that we have found twofold. One, we don't have many men who gravitate towards nursing. And two, we don't have many of our young women who are gravitating towards nursing either because they want to do other things. And so one of the things we have found is that a lot of our nurses are now at the age where they're approaching retirement. In fact, some are now doing post-retirement, meaning that they've already passed that age but we've extended their time. In fact, I have had to make the decision of bringing back retired nurses into the system in order to ensure that we're covered. So I think that nursing provides area for those who have that calling to step up and be a part of that fraternity. And we continue to encourage our young people to engage. Insofar as doctors are concerned, we have employed as general practitioners, I think perhaps somewhere in the region of 5 doctors in the last 2 years or so.
Do you know if we have a pediatrician, internist, and radiologist on staff?
We have no radiologists, but we have a pediatrician, we have internists, we have surgeons, of course, we have gynecologists, gynecological services that are available. We had a local internist, but regrettably, she left and has moved to another island in the Caribbean to offer her services. So we've recently got one from Cuba. And in addition to that, we have anesthesiologists as well. So we have various specialties that are available to us on Nevis.
Okay, I have another question for you, but I'm going to give Reese a chance to ask you a question.
Here's a question. As we now know that there are 4 cases of COVID-19 are recovered, what are the plans going forward for any future pandemics?
I'm sorry, I heard you say we now know 4 recovered cases and what?
Yeah, what are the plans going forward for any future pandemics of this nature?
Right, well, I think that's an excellent question. The problem, of course, is that we just don't know what's going to happen. But I think this has taught us in terms of our responsiveness, how quickly we were able to put a team together, the critical nature of communication with the public. Initially, I think all of us thought that this was like SARS or MERS. You hear about them in the Middle East, in China. You didn't really expect that around the world. And so we, I think, initially looked at it and didn't see it as a threat that it did become eventually. But when we did realize that this threat was much bigger than anticipated, we did act quickly. So we put together our COVID-19 task force, both federally and locally. Our EOC, Emergency Operations Center in Nevis, has been in 24-hour operation, 7 days a week, 2 shifts. Our people have really been responsive, our police. So I think the lesson learned here is that we must be at the ready. We can't predict it, but we must be at the ready, and we must ensure that we stay informed and look to what is happening in the world, because I don't know about you guys, but when I heard about Wuhan, I had to go and check on Google to find out where Wuhan was. I mean, I don't think that we would have thought that Wuhan would have come to Charleston or Bastille, at that time, but it did. And I think that now with travel being as it is, the world is indeed a global village. And so we must now deal with that possibility that in the future, there'll be some other kind of pandemic, influenza, whatever it may be, that we'll have to deal with. So I think communication, we've been excellent at it, and I think that that has to stay. And the rapidity of response, being nimble and being able to respond quickly, getting out in front of the camera, preaching the message over and over again. I mean, the smallest of children now in Nevis know about washing your hands and coughing in your elbow because of constant repetition. And I think the people at our health promotion unit in Nevis have really done an excellent job in getting out front and taking the messaging. I mean, I even did this COVID-19 jingle, on Facebook, which was well received, where people were competing for some cash prizes. And again, that was all about helping to spread the message of what we ought to be doing. And of course, it unearthed some talent as well, but that's a different matter. The idea was really to engage in helping to spread that message. So I think all of these are important initiatives which we must continue to have at the ready. So you have them there ready. In case you need them, you pull them off the shelf.
Perfect. And there's more questions I have about our foresight for the future, but I want to stick with health for a little bit. And you mentioned that we have no radiologists on staff, right? So if we don't have a radiologist on staff, who is currently reading the imagery and who is making the diagnosis?
Well, as far as I know, we have someone who is trained in radiology, meaning that we have someone who deals with the x-rays and all of those.
Is it not a radio
No.
Not a radio technician.
I think and I hope I'm saying the right thing, but I think a radiologist is a specific designation that you would have to get qualified as a radiologist. You can have somebody who is not a radiologist, but more of a technical person who can read the films for x-rays and the like. I think when there are bigger issues, then what I know happens is that you would get a radiologist involved in the sense of sending that film, and if you need a second opinion, or in the case that we have embarked on here, we would sometimes send people over to St. Kitts to do an MRI or to get some imaging that an X-ray or not reveal. So we do not have a radiologist on staff, but we do have somebody on staff who has technical competence in terms of X-ray. So I don't know what the designation is, whether it's a technician or I really don't know. I ought to know, but I don't know what it is. But I don't think the person is a radiologist in the sense of somebody trained in and having a radiology.
All right. In terms of you mentioned MRI. So St. Kitts has an MRI machine and also a CT machine. Is there any efforts to get any of those machines for Nevis and a radiologist as well?
Yeah, well, they go hand in hand, because I think once you go down that road, you need a radiologist to be able to properly manage that. So the short answer is yes. We are already, in fact, we've already sourced CT scan. What we're hoping to do, however, is that we would want the new building to be completed and then to outfit that new building with the new equipment. We had discussed in the cabinet whether we would get that equipment now, but what was being offered was a sort of containerized unit for it. And so we thought, rather than spending that kind of money to get a containerized unit, why don't we delay the expenditure and do it properly when we have the building that's ready? So that's the plan that we're working on at the moment. But the short answer is yes, and we've already started the procurement process in terms of identifying the equipment that we will need.
Have you also identified a time frame in which you would like this thing to be completed?
Well, the time frame is yesterday, to be honest. I mean, I would like this done as quickly as possible. But in relation to the construction of the new wing, that is highly technical, because, you know, whilst the outer frame is now practically complete, the inner workings and how the insides flow, I confess that I myself didn't realize there was such a science to building hospital. You know, it's not an ordinary building that you just put up. So inside has to flow in a certain way. So we are now bringing in the experts to deal with that side of things. The project, I think, was anticipated to be at least 24 months. We have had some delays on that project, but I'm hopeful that post-COVID, we'll be able to proceed apace and get that project completed. It's certainly something that we have committed to doing in this term. And obviously, we've only gone 2 years, so we have ample time to get things done, I feel, in this term, this first term of my administration.
All right. So you also mentioned you are the Minister of Tourism, and there is.
Hold on before you go. We have one more health question.
Well, no, I ain't changing from health. I'm still on health.
Okay.
There is also a field called health tourism. Have you ever thought about bringing health tourism to Nevis?
You broke up. Are you asking me about health tourism?
Have you ever thought about introducing health tourism to Nevis?
Okay. There has been some discussions, but obviously to get health tourism anywhere, you need significant investment, because you have to have the facilities for people to come to. Cayman Islands is a good example. They got a foreign investor who came in and did a significant investment, a brand new hospital there, and they're promoting health tourism. Health is very expensive. The equipment is mind-bogglingly expensive. And so you need to really be in a position to invest that kind of money, attract persons in. Having said that, Nevis has had some level, although minimal, of people coming to the island to have procedures done. So for example, we have had Dr. Thwaites, who is a urologist, and he has been able to bring people in, treat them here for prostate and prostate problems and that kind of thing. Many people have come over from to also be treated here at our hospital in Nevis for those kinds of difficulties. So we've had, if you will, the kernels of health tourism that can be developed, but it requires significant investment. You must have the facility. And recently, in having some discussions with some individuals who had shown some interest, one of the drawbacks that they raised was also the airport, because they're saying that if you're going to go into that area, you must be able to land here. People are not, sick people are not going to want to have to jump to Puerto Rico and sink.
Which will be a discussion.
And take a boat and that kind of thing. They want to be able to come in.
All right. Reese?
All right. So, Premier Brantley, one of the questions, right, and in the comments is, NRP spoke of 2 dialysis machines, and they said that they weren't put into use. What do you have to say about that?
Well, that's true. They were not put into use, and NRP never intended to put them into use either. Because as I've indicated to persons, a dialysis refrigerator that you just plug in. And so I want you to consider, and your audience to consider, that you go out and you buy a motor car, all right? You spend taxpayers' money on a motor car, but you have nobody who could drive the car. You have no mechanic who can fix the car. You don't even know how to turn on the car. And it is such a tricky thing that if anybody goes in the car without the necessary training, that person dies. So dialysis is such a technical thing that if you put somebody who requires dialysis in the hands of people who are untrained, using machinery that nobody knows how to operate, it's basically a death sentence. When we got into office, we had 2 dialysis machines delivered on April 1st, All Fools Day. I don't know if that has any significance, but that is when they arrived. And when I asked the question, who was trained? Nobody. Which doctor knows about this thing? Nobody. Where's the nephrologist? None. Where's the surgeon to put in the shunts? None. Where are the nurses who are trained in dialysis? None. Who are the people gonna deal with the dialysis machines? Who are gonna deal with the water treatment? None, 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 none. And that's when you start to realize that these dialysis machines were really an election gimmick. Somebody wanted I'm sorry?
They were a blind shot.
But somebody wanted to say, oh, the dialysis machines and dialysis is in the country, as if the machine itself would work on its own. And so we had to decision, do we simply plug in these machines and put people at risk, or do we leave that to one side? Now, at the time, people were forced to go to Anguilla and St. Martin for dialysis treatment. But on around the same time, Sinkit's got dialysis treatment down there. And so we then came to a situation where we were able to make arrangements with St. Kitts that all of the people from Nevis requiring dialysis were being dialyzed in St. Kitts. And that arrangement continues until such time as we're able to sensibly put dialysis in Nevis. The other thing is in relation to the cost. Now, I know that one cannot put a cost on health because there is no price that is too high for someone's life. But at the end of the day, we still have to understand that the island has limited resources. And so I made every effort to bring a dialysis program to Nevis as Minister of Health. I traveled to Guyana. I met with dialysis centers there. We spoke to most of the large dialysis operators in America. I remember one conversation very well, gentlemen, because the CEO, whoever the man was, the big man for this dialysis center, got on the phone. And he said he has one question to start the conversation. How many patients do you have in Nevis that require dialysis? My answer to him at the time was 3. He said, sir, there's no need for us to talk any further. That was the end of the conversation. Because with 3 patients, the dance can't pay for the lights, as the old people say. And so you're going to have a situation where if dialysis is eventually introduced in Nevis, the Nevisian people must make a decision. Are they going to pay a tax? Are they going to pay something that will allow this service to function here? Because dialysis, even on zinc, is at this point, is up to $800 per treatment, and most people need 2 to 3 treatments per week. So you do the math. At $800, 3 treatments a week, that is $2,400 per week that most people have to find in order to have dialysis done. So it's a very expensive undertaking. And so it would also require some budgeting and some proper planning to determine how you're going to pay for dialysis. And none of that was done. None of that was done at all. Since we have been in, and as we are now preparing, we've taken a different approach. We've said dialysis is only relevant at the end stage. Dialysis is necessary when your kidneys have failed. So we have said, okay, working with the Taiwanese, we've had a 3-year program, which through the intervention of Hazel Brandy Williams, our junior Minister of Health, and others, has now been expanded by Taiwan, where we're now dealing with renal health in a holistic way. More education, we have introduced more nutritious meals in school. Nevis has actually hired a qualified chef to lead that effort so that our children are weaned off the sweets and the corn curls and things too early. We have introduced far more education to try and change lifestyles, because we know that diabetes and hypertension are gateways for kidney failure, and that those are principally types of diseases. So we have introduced a more holistic approach where we have, our youths now are cooking healthy. We've introduced cooking in the schools for them. And the idea is that dialysis is an end stage, but even in relation to dialysis, many now of our nurses and a few of our doctors have been exposed, because we've sent them with the assistance of the Taiwanese government to Taiwan, where they've spent several months working with dialysis, getting trained in dialysis, so that at the point in time when we get ready for it, we have personnel who have actually had some exposure to how dialysis ought to work. But I want to end the discussion on dialysis by saying that dialysis is highly technical. It is something where if you get it wrong, people die. And I and the government, the CCM-led government, were not going to take that risk. And we were not going to get engaged in a photo op with some machines, as if the machines could work themselves. The car can't drive itself. And as I said, we had neither driver nor mechanic. We had no one who even knew where the gas pedal was. We had no idea how to manage these machines, because nothing was ever put in place.
All right.
Okay. And yeah, I commend you on the lunch program and the introduction of a healthier eating. That is important. That is a problem that I see that we face in the Caribbean on a whole. I think one time a study was released that showed that the Caribbean is significantly obese, and people didn't want to believe it, but it is true.
Here in St. Kitts Nevis.
Yeah.
In St. Kitts Nevis, I think the statistics suggest 1 in 3 children were obese.
Is there any plans to also ban sugar?
Obesity again is a gateway.
Sorry, you were saying something. I think we got.
No, I'm saying I think the studies in St. Kitts Nevis show that 1 in 3, including in children, are obese.
Yeah.
And obesity is again a gateway that leads to other problems: diabetes, hypertension, and ultimately things like blindness, amputations, kidney failure. All of those are factors. So we have to continue the education.
All right, and I think we could move on from the dialysis talk. I do want to say that I think that I did not run the numbers, but it may have been a good introduction to tourism health. And I don't know how long it takes to have someone trained to use the dialysis machine, but that is also something that I think the administration could have looked at, and I think you may have looked at it and the numbers maybe did not work out. So, Reese, were you gonna ask something else?
No, I'm okay on the health thing,
Well,
the health topic. So if there's anything else you want to ask before we move forward, you can ask.
on health,
Yeah.
sure.
Because if there is not, then we go into the nitty gritty with the premier.
Are you reaching nitty-gritty yet?
No man. No man.
I think the nitty-gritty for him is strictly politics, right? So
Because I have a question.
he has
for you.
a question that he
Sure.
wants to
I have
ask.
$1 million, and it's $1 million question.
Yeah.
What's that question?
Yeah, so we're gonna get through everything, and then the $1 million question then come to the end of the program.
And
I'm sorry, I don't.
No, we're gonna get through everything else, and then I'll bring my question at the end.
Okay.
so in sticking with COVID-19, how many other doctors and nurses that were deployed to Nevis that came from Cuba?
Well, we just had one doctor that came, and I think 6 nurses. So they came to assist. The doctor is an epidemiologist.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very useful because she obviously is trained in epidemiology. I think handles, diseases and things like viruses. So she was assigned to us, and she's been working with our people at the EOC. She joined the team there. And then the nurses were deployed. Of course, they all had to be quarantined as well. So they were all quarantined for 14 days before they were allowed to join the workforce. They had come through discussions with the Cuban government in the event that we had contagion, in the event that things got out of control. As it has turned out, we were quite blessed that despite the fact of having 15 cases nationally, none required hospitalization. And so we didn't see the strain on the health system as we saw and are seeing elsewhere. So we have been very fortunate in that regard.
Got it. And I've heard talks about the second round of COVID. Everyone speaks about the second surge of COVID. Are we making plans for the second round of COVID in the event after we reopen our borders that we do have a second round of COVID-19?
Well, that is the million question. We do. My own sense is that what we must do first is ensure that we're safe at home. Mm-hmm. So we ensure that there's no community spread and that St. Kitts and Nevis is COVID-free insofar as our population contained within St. Kitts and Nevis is concerned. I think thereafter we have to contend with the wider world, because once you open your borders, but bear in mind that you can open your borders selectively. So for example, you can say that you allow Caribbean nationals to come, but not people from elsewhere. You can ban people from certain hotspots, which will potentially lower your risk. So we might well see a phased reopening of borders as we go. Okay. Ultimately, though, I think that we will have to get a regime of testing. We'll have to be able to test people when they arrive, to test people perhaps during their stay, to ensure that we get early detection and isolation and treatment if necessary. My own feeling is that tourism as we know it is going to change. I think that you already see the airlines are complaining because to practice social distancing at airlines when the business model has been to pack as many people as you can into the aircraft. Now they're having to retreat from that. Yes. It's likely to see an increase in pricing because if you can't have 3 people in the seat now in the seat, you must only have 2. Then the airline is clearly going to try to pass on that cost to travelers. So I think that we're going to have to work through in a systematic way all these changes. And I would be lying if I told you that I had the answer. I think we would just have to continue to listen to the experts and continue to plan accordingly.
And I trust that you are making those preparations. And
we indeed are, yes.
And I definitely think we could switch.
Hold on. Go ahead. Premier Brantley, there's a question regarding mask. I guess the rumor going around is that masks are now going to be mandatory. How will people be able to get masks?
Well, I've just learned tonight that we are expecting another shipment of masks coming in from our friends in Taiwan. They've been very generous. They've sent us 40,000. I got an additional 60,000 on their way. And so I anticipate that masks will be made available to members of the public.
Okay.
Also, there are many members of the public who have made masks. There's some people who have been doing quite well on both islands, making them and selling them. And that has been a sort of cottage industry that has developed. In the case of the Nevis Island administration, we have had some locals who have stepped forward, some residents on the island, and they have ordered somewhere in the region of 10,000 masks. The difference with these masks that we ordered is that they're reusable. And I think that that is a distinction because some of the masks that have been donated are single use. So once you've used them, you have to discard them. And so if you are somebody who's going out daily, it means that you need several of those masks. So we have instead opted to order some that are reusable, some that you can wash and some that use a filter. And we are going to be investing in ensuring that people have additional filters that we can change. I think one filter this year should last for about a week. And so what we're hopeful is that that becomes the norm. Even though we are now hearing that there's some dangers associated with prolonged use. So we are urging our people that if they're alone in their car, they don't need to have the mask on. If they're alone in the room, they don't need to have the mask on. If they're home, they don't need to have it on. They only need to have it on when they expect that they'll be interacting with other people. But I think that the model that certainly Nevis is going to use, the government is going to make masks available to the public to ensure that everybody has a mask. And of course, the public is also buying their own. They're getting donations from far and near. And so I think that we will have ample amongst our people.
So the question is about the first set of masks. Were those given out to the public or were those given to essential workers and stuff of that nature?
Right. They principally, when Nevis got roughly a quarter of the masks that came from Taiwan, and the ones that Nevis got were largely for the essential workers, because there were people in the front lines of the government service, inland revenue, etc. They were provided with masks because we're asking people to come out to work. But then those masks are single use. I want to emphasize that. So don't go very far, even though the number may sound like a lot. So you say you get 40,000 masks and it sounds like a lot, but that was 40,000 for the Federation. But if Nevis even got 10,000 of those, when you start to think that it's single use, you realize in a single week, one person may use, 5 or 6 in a week. So it goes by really quickly. That is why we've decided that the better way is to invest in some reusable masks. All right. So that's what we're seeking to do. So the short answer to your question is we didn't build those to the public because the fact that it's single use, we didn't think it made sense to give every person one of those that they use one time and then have to discard.
All right.
All right.
And COVID-19 again, we have seen, COVID-19 and the economy. We have seen time and time again that tourism alone is not sustainable for our economy. COVID-19, I think, is now the greatest example of that. And even moving forward, you mentioned tourism will change. Tourism, I think maybe people will not be able to travel as much because it will be more expensive. What do you see as an option for economic diversification for St. Kitts and Nevis on a whole, and maybe even Nevis on a smaller scale?
Well, first of all, I disagree that tourism is not an option. Tourism has been the mainstay of the Caribbean for a very long time. You look at countries like Barbados, countries like the Bahamas, Jamaica, Dominican Republic, much larger countries. Tourism has been the engine that has driven their development. Similarly, in Barbados, St. Kitts, St. Lucia, as a case, because we have a competitive advantage in relation to tourism. The Caribbean is a brand name like Rolls-Royce. It is known for excellence. When you hear about you having a honeymoon in the Caribbean, you know, bells and whistles go off, because whilst we may take it for granted, what we have is coveted globally. So I think we have a competitive advantage. Are close to 300 million people living in the United States who have disposable income and want to travel, and we are a convenient destination for them. That is why we're so significant as a cruise destination. That is why we're so significant as a tourism destination.
Mm-hmm.
But that the Caribbean region is heavily dependent on tourism, and perhaps some would argue too heavily dependent. So in terms of diversification, I think St. Kitts Nevis has done well with citizenship by investment, as an example, where we started that, we originated that somewhere back in 1989, 1990. The first, we gave the idea to the world. Now it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, but when we started, we were the only country in the world offering that. And I would obviously say kudos to the then Prime Minister Simmons for having the vision to put that in place. We have that, I think, is something that we ought to develop more. I think that affords us an opportunity which isn't at the vagaries of hurricanes and COVID and things of that nature. I think that agriculture has to play a more significant role now as we try to feed ourselves and learn a valuable lesson from COVID. And yes, we can't be competitive in terms of agriculture because we don't have the cheap labor or the land mass. But I think we can be competitive in terms of added value. So we can do more in terms of agro-processing, creating local products, you know, jams, jellies, you know, things that I think we can create a niche for. Nevis, for example, has honey, which is well sought after. Things of that nature, I think we can do more of and develop cottage industries in that regard. I think financial services on Nevis, banking, trust services, international business companies, we've been under some threat from Europe, principally, but I think we have weathered those storms, and I think that that can provide, again, good paying jobs for people here, and another effort at diversification. In Nevis, we have geothermal energy. That project has run into some snags over the years, but I think that they're now on a path where we hope that that will come to fruition. They've started to clear the site and things. Again, we were distracted by COVID, but certainly we feel that that is something that can again afford us another string to our bow in terms of alternative energy, renewable energy, which would allow us an option there to develop a new industry and potentially export energy to neighboring islands as well. So I think that we have a few things that we would want to look at in terms of how we can develop. I think too that there's scope for more technology, more businesses using technology. I see, for example, some youngsters in Nevis responded very quickly and started to do deliveries of groceries and things. You could order online and they bring your grocery to your doorstep. I think that we're going to see more of that, more food delivery, more grocery delivery as people social distance and they know that I can stay at home and order dinner. I can stay at home, and things that you guys take for granted in the US that have not been as prevalent here. I think that that is something that we'll probably see and will provide some avenues, particularly for young creative people, to put their creative talents to work. So I see areas involving technology as having some role to play as well as we try to reorient our economy.
All right, Premier Brantley, there's a question that just came in for you. When will non-established workers be made pensionable?
Well, that is something that is an ongoing process. I say that because legislation was put in place. In fact, legislation was put in place since the Douglas administration, if I recall, in the dying days of that Labour NRP administration. But that legislation was never actualized. It never came into its full rigor. So it's an ongoing process. Part of the problem is, speaking candidly, is that non-established workers have not paid into the system. Pensions are things normally where somebody pays in, they get out. And because of the non-established nature, they would not have paid into the system. Most non-established workers over the years, every Christmas, they would get what they call an honorarium. They would get an additional payment at Christmas time, which established workers did not get. Established workers only get something when you declare double salary.
All right.
But every year, non-established workers used to get this because the idea behind the non-established worker, let us recall, tended to be, not always, but tended to be persons who may not necessarily have had the academic minimum requirements that the civil service demanded. So people came in and they were doing a particular chore, a particular job. But the situation that has developed is that some have been there for 30 and 40 years. In Nevis, for example, you have people in the water department for 35 years. And you now have people who are 55, 60, who are saying, well, I going home with nothing. That doesn't seem fair. So that's something that we're trying to work out to see how we're going to fund it. That is really the question that how we're going to fund it to ensure that our non-established workers are taken care of as well.
Perfect. Perfect.
All right. So, Premier Brantley, we are now, as we know, we're now gearing up for the election campaigning time.
Don't go into that yet.
Oh, I was stomach.
Don't go into the election. We can end it with the election talks. I want to ask the premier, like, what is his vision for the 9-year-old child in Nevis?
I think the 9-year-old child, the 2-year-old child, the 15-year-old child, my vision is the same. I want the vision children to understand they can be whatever they want to be. It may sound trite, it may sound simple, but I think for too long, our people were told you can't be this and you can't be that. It's my own life as a guidepost. From where I was born, I tell people, you know, I mean, you dreaded the night when you had to go to the bathroom when the sun don't set because you got to go through some bush to find the latrine. That has been the experience of a lot of us. Never mind now people are driving nice cars and living in nice homes. The reality is a lot of us don't sleep on what we used to call lodging. So I think because of circumstances of our life, many of us were told, you can't be this and you can't be that. And so many of us had the circumstances of our birth determined. I want every child on this island to understand that they're limited only by the extent of their ambition, that the circumstances of their birth have absolutely nothing to do with where they're going. If they work hard, if they're prepared to seize opportunities, and if they're prepared to set goals for themselves and achieve those goals. I think if every child in Nevis can have that kind of self-confidence, I believe that we will be on our way to the best island, best run, best quality of life that we can find anywhere in the world. And that would be my wish for every child on this island. And I'm hopeful that as I exit the stage, which may happen soon, that our children will, at least that message that will continue to resonate with our children and our people, that we can be whatever we want to be, whatever we set our minds to, we can be that. And so I don't want a situation where, for example, a child born in Barnesgut or Hanley's Road feels I can't be Governor General of St. Kitts, or I can't be Prime Minister, or I can't be whatever position. I believe that every child, not just in Nevis, but in St. Kitts as well, but since you asked me specifically about Nevis, every child must feel that he or she can grow up to be whatever he or she wants to be. And that, I think, for a long time has been lacking in our system. We have had limitations placed on us, you know, when we were told that somehow that ambition was beyond you. As a youngster growing up, if I told people when I'm a little boy down Hanley's Road walking barefoot that I wanted to be a lawyer, they would probably have laughed at me. Yeah. Because the sense was, oh, you're going to be a lawyer, look where you come from. So again, I like to use myself because I'm saying to people, if I could have done it, anybody could, I would want to encourage our young people to set goals and work towards them. So that would be what I hope our young people would take to heart.
All right. And I would suspect that do you have like any mentorship program as the premier?
I wouldn't say a program because that to me suggests that I have something formal in place. I engage with a lot of young people. I am pleased that one of the things that I have done quietly is that I have sponsored a lot of youngsters who are at university. I have provided to help a lot of youngsters at scholarships, but certainly assistance. And I have sourced a lot of scholarships from countries and things that I know some youngsters have also benefited from. So I wouldn't suggest that I have a formal mentorship program, but what I have done, because I saw in my mentor, Dr. Simeon Daniel, he used to have a good eye for identifying talent. So he brought Van Zamri around him. He brought people like Victor J. Martin around him. He brought me around him. And he had a way of looking at young people and saying, you know, I see something in that young man or young woman. Let me try and influence them. And I have tried to do the same in relation to some of our young people.
Commend you on that. Commend you on that. You did say soon. I hope you're not thinking about retiring from politics anytime soon.
Politics is a difficult business, you know. When I started, I looked like you. I look young. Look at me now.
I don't know that yet.
So, you know, I mean, I have to think about where I go from now, you know.
All right. All right. And one more before I guess we could get into the spice that Reese wants to introduce. I would like to know what sets your administration apart from all the different administration from time past, including the Van Zamri-led administration that you were a part of?
Well, I think we have in many respects continued in the vein that Van Zamri would have set. We have tremendous respect for him. I think he is one of the most successful politicians that Nevis has ever seen and successful leaders that Nevis has ever seen. And so I would have sat at his feet, obviously, over the past 5 years in government, from 2013 until 2017. And then he stepped aside, and I always give him credit for that because we see the opposite happening around the world where people are trying to hold on for as long as possible. Van Zamri would have continued to win in Nevis until he was 150. And so the fact that he stepped aside when he did, he really was at the height of his popularity and power. And I think that speaks volumes, that he recognized that the party needed, you know, some new life and younger ones coming through. Our party, I think, what sets us apart, our government at this point, I think, is the youthfulness. Not that I'm that young, but I think that I have a team around me of people who are really in their prime, in my view. People who are technologically savvy, who use social media, who are engaged in different ways with people and with the electorate. I recall, for example, that many used to refer to me in a derisory fashion as the Facebook minister. I used to get a lot of cuss as people say, oh, he always on social media. Now I see other politicians paying people to go on social media for them. Oh, really? I don't have to do that because a single message from me, I can get out to thousands of people instantaneously. So I think that in that way, we have used and are using technology a bit more. In terms of our thinking, what sets us apart, we are very committed to the people of Nevis. I think that the decision that was just taken by us, where ministers willingly gave up some portion of their salary, I gave up my salary. People look at it and say, well, 10%, that ain't much money, 100%, you're still getting paid. The truth is we didn't have to do it. But we opted to do it because we felt it was the right thing to do, to send the right signal to the people of Nevis, that in times of hardship, your leaders must also be there with you. In times of plenty, we're there and we're taking the credit. So when hardship comes, we must also be there. And I think that that symbolism, to my mind, characterizes the type of leadership that where we say people matter most and we mean it.
Okay. And You did mention geothermal, which could have huge economical benefits to the island of Nevis. But do you see you as the leader of Nevis bringing an investment to Nevis that would be as great as Four Seasons?
I think geothermal would be greater if it can happen. And that is why I have been one who really has been pushing very hard. I think that the Division people have become enamored with hotels. They feel only if you bring a hotel, you've brought investment. But as COVID has shown, as hurricanes have shown, that you could have 100 hotels. When that shut down, that shut down. So I think in terms of bringing something different and impactful to our economy, that geothermal is a game changer. So we are very committed to that particular project. As I said, it has been badly delayed. I'm not going to run away from that. It hasn't been the fault of the government. It's really been a number of factors in terms of raising the financing. But the developers are now saying they're good to go. And we are hopeful that this time around we can execute. That, I think, would be a game changer for the island. And I think it'll ultimately be bigger than Four Seasons. Having said that, we also have other investments. I'm sorry?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Having said that, we also have some other investments here, like the Medical University of the Americas, which we feel in terms of its impact. I think people don't often recognize the impact because they say, oh, it's only 500 students, but those students are tourists for 8 months out of the year. You know, they're renting apartments, they're renting cars, they're consuming. And that is a sector that we would like to see grow as well. We have seen on our sister island of St. Kitts how transformative the offshore university concept has been. We've seen in our Caribbean brothers and sisters in Grenada how St. George's University has revolutionized Grenada in terms of its economy. So we feel that there are some options there as well that can be pursued.
All right, Premier Brantley, you spoke of the economy and different things to bring into the economy. Here's a question that I have for you. As we have seen in different parts of the world, legalization of marijuana and marijuana cultivation has brought a big boost to numerous economies. We both know that the soil in St. Kitts Nevis is very fertile. Is there any possibility that we can see marijuana being used as another stream of economical advancement?
I think the short answer is yes. The marijuana industry is a potential that can really be developed. We've seen how it has transformed some states in the United States, and we've seen the impact it has had in places like Canada. We've also, of course, long looked at places like, is it the Netherlands? I think Holland,
yes.
Where they have Amsterdam, I think, where they have marijuana as well that's available. But I think we have to be careful. And the truth is that marijuana, whether we like it or not, is still classified under United Nations classifications as a dangerous drug. The United States of America, still at the federal level, criminalizes marijuana. And so we have to be prudent because, and I give you a practical example. People say free up the herb in St. Kitts Nevis, free it up, let people start to plant it and sell it and all of that. Fine. When you plant it and you sell it and you take your money down to National Bank to bank it, and you tell National Bank, what's your occupation? What's generating this money? You say, I'm a ganja farmer. It may not pose a problem in St. Kitts Nevis, but National Bank then has its correspondent banks in the United States. And the US federal banking system says that marijuana is a dangerous drug, it's an illegal drug, and therefore any proceeds from the sale of marijuana becomes the proceeds of crime. So you see, right away now, you're creating a risk now for the banking system, where banks in New York will say, boy, we don't really want to deal with National Bank or Bank of Nevis because they have ganja money in there. And we don't want the federal regulators to come down on us, so we cut them loose. And this phenomenon of what we call de-risking becomes a reality for us. So we have to recognize that the industry that marijuana could present also has some political and economic fallout that we would have to manage very carefully. And so before we just say, free up the herb and let everybody be happy, we have to think about the implications of that. So my short answer to your question, yes, I think that it provides potential for diversification of the economy, managed carefully. No, we have seen some proposals that have come, which frankly, I'm very excited about, where it's not going to be growing marijuana in the traditional sense. They'll have a controlled facility where they extract certain oils and things from the marijuana. And then those oils are what they then export under controlled circumstances to labs and people who are dealing in marijuana products in Europe and places such as those. If that can happen, then it means that it's a different type of industry where it is medicinal in nature rather than simply recreational. And so that has worked elsewhere. And so that is a model that we might want to consider as a first step as we deal with now those other issues that I've mentioned. We also have to ensure that we have adequate education, because people say different things about marijuana. I have never used it for myself. I have known many people who have used it. Some people use it and it appears to have no effect on them. Other people, because of their psychological makeup or maybe their chemical makeup in their bodies, it has an effect on them in a different way. And so some argue that marijuana is beneficial. Others say it can have non-beneficial effects on you. So we have to, I think, have a sufficient education so that just like alcohol, where we keep it out of the hands of mind, we must do the same with marijuana. How do you regulate it? How do you control it? How do you ensure that the youngsters in school aren't going to be using it? All of these, I think, are factors that we must take into account as we try to make that transition. But my short answer to you is, I think it's yes, an industry that we will have to look to, but I think that it requires professional education to go along with it.
Okay.
All right. All right, I totally understand. All right, anything else?
Well, there was one comment that someone wanted to know what right now stands as your trophy, in as the premier of Nevis in terms of development.
My trophy?
Yes, your trophy. I think, what is the one thing that you are most proud of that you have accomplished since you have stepped into office?
I will tell you something which is odd.
Okay.
That my greatest accomplishment, right, since I've been in politics, was driving through Charlestown one day and seeing the most beautiful young woman walking down the street. She had a handbag, she was dressed in her heels and a beautiful suit, and she could have been on Wall Street. And she was so well put together, I thought to myself, my goodness. I took a second look. And when I took the second look, as I got close, I recognized her for a young woman from a poor family that I had been able to get a scholarship for, who went to school, came back, got her degree, and was now in a good paying job, walking down the street of Charlestown. And that to me was more fundamental in terms of satisfaction than any building or any road or anything like that I have been responsible for on the island of Nevis. Because to me, you have to build people. And when you build people and you make people better, that they become the best of themselves, I think that is where you start to really point to successes insofar as politics is concerned. Okay. So that would be an odd answer, but I felt that in all my years in politics, that was my proudest moment, seeing this young woman walking through Charlestown and knowing the role that I played in helping her to get an education. I didn't write the exam for her, but I got her the necessary funding, because from a poor family, I don't think she would ever have been able to afford to do that. And so that for me was a very, very proud moment. I don't know if it's a trophy, but I certainly felt very proud.
Changing lives, for the better is something very commendable. So, We could take that. But you mentioned that we had two internists, right? And
No, we had an internist. I'm sorry. We had a local internist who left.
Yes. Okay.
And so we've now brought
one in. Okay. So my question to you now is there's always been a problem with brain drain. You have Reese and myself. We're sitting in the United States of America. What initiatives is your government taking to kind of curb brain drain?
Well, let me be honest. It is difficult to curb brain drain. Mm-hmm. I have a different perspective on this notion of brain drain. Mm-hmm. You and Risa in America, as you say, I'm sitting down in Montpellier and you're talking to me. Mm-hmm. You're sharing your expertise, your technology, your skills. You're interviewing me, pulling me over the coals here about all kind of issues. You are engaged and contributing, even though you are in America. So I don't think that we've lost your brains. I don't think that St. Kitts Nevis has lost access to you. Especially now with technology, you can be anywhere in the world and make a contribution to your home country as you both are doing. So my view in relation to this brain drain, I don't subscribe to that. This is not the time when we're taking a boat to England and we're not seeing each other again for 10 years. This is a time when people are engaged, people like yourselves overseas are investing at home, you're sending home savings. There are a lot of people in the United States and elsewhere whose primary savings account is in St. Kitts Nevis. You all are engaged in every single way. I have traveled abroad and interacted with our people, and sometimes they're more informed about what is going on at home than even our people right here at home, because they listen to all the radio stations, they're tuned in. So I feel what we need to do is to build a framework where we can access people like yourselves more often. Meaning that we know where you are, we know what your skill set is. And so when we need a radiologist, you mentioned a radiologist, when we need an internist, that we can reach out to our people in the diaspora and say, hey, we know we have a guy up there in Toronto. Can he come and assist us? We need an engineer. We know we have one there in Washington, D.C. Can he come out and give us 3 months? I think that's what we need to do. And we have engaged, certainly through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in a mapping exercise that we are seeking to undertake. The idea behind that is really to find out where the members of our diaspora are and what their skill sets might be. So if, for example, you are a computer whiz, and I need a network set up, I know I can reach out to you as a government and say, hey, we have this program where we want to do this network and we want you to be a part of that. So, right, well, I'm just saying. So I see this whole notion of brain drain, I see it in a different way. I don't think we're losing anything by having people in America or in the UK, provided that those people are connected and prepared to contribute.
Okay, and I like that one. That's a good answer. Reese, I think we're nearing the end, you know, so you could get into the nitty-gritty of.
We are not in this area.
Huh?
All right. So Premier Brantley.
Okay, now I'm hearing you.
All right, Premier Brantley. So as we know, the current government, the unity government, it's a coalition government. So the question that I want to ask is how is the leader chosen, seeing that his 3 political parties that came together to form one government? How is the leader chosen, and how do you pick that leader?
Well, we agreed on that. That was a decision that was taken by the 3 parties. That Dr. Harris, at the time, he had the experience, he had the necessary credentials, we thought, and that he was the best person to lead Team Unity. And you will recall that I was the person who introduced him at the rally in Greenlands Park, when I introduced him as the next Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. So that was a collective decision that was arrived at by the 3 parties.
Okay, so here's the question now. With that being a collective decision, had he not won, who would have then been the leader? Was that also in place?
No, we had not gone any further than that because we understood based on what we had looked at in terms of the numbers that Dr. Harris is in a safe seat, number 7. We expect that that is a seat that he will continue to do well in. So we expected that he would have been one of those individuals to cross the finish line. The rest of us weren't so sure, but we were sure that he would cross the finish line. So I think on that basis, we were pretty confident that he would be in the parliament.
Okay.
I have a question. For the upcoming elections, we know there was an issue with the boundaries for the last one. What boundaries can we expect to be used for the upcoming elections?
I think, Ira, that's an excellent question. The lawyers that are dealing with this matter, I think that Douglas Mendes was quite famous in the region. He's the lead lawyer on the matter. And they have indicated that, of course, Dr. Douglas had proposed some boundaries. And those boundaries were not the boundaries we went to the polls on in 2015, because the Privy Council indicated that the timing was wrong, and that in terms of when the proclamation was issued, etc., that those boundaries did not take effect. There has, I gather, been a subsequent injunction that is in place, and that, as we speak, continues to be in place. If that injunction were to continue to be in place, it means that, again, the boundaries will be the old boundaries. The matter is still before the court. It's still a live matter before the court. I'm aware that the Boundaries Commission members, a new Boundaries Commission that they have been meeting. Where that is in terms of that process, I can't give you an update tonight because I don't have one to give. But certainly this matter is still a matter that is actively before the courts. What the courts will decide, whether they will decide before, that's the million-dollar question, and I can't answer that. What I will say to you two gentlemen until you listen in public is that so far as the Concerned Citizens Movement is concerned, we are going to contest an election, whatever boundaries might be presented. Because as far as we are concerned, boundaries don't vote, people vote.
People vote.
And once we go out and do our job and appeal to our people, and our people are persuaded that we have done what is necessary, I feel comfortable and confident. So the boundaries is not a factor for CCM.
No.
And we have not worried about that. We're going to go out and talk to our people, and we're going to say to the Division people that we are the best team to take them forward. And that's our simple message.
All right. Wait. So you, when you were talking to Reese, you said at the time you thought that the Premier was the best, the current Prime Minister, sorry, was the best option. And do you still feel that way?
Well, he continues to be the leader of Team Unity. And I have not seen or heard anything to the contrary. So far as we are concerned, we determined that together, jointly, that he was the best person. And that hasn't changed. In the 5 years he has been there, he has managed Sinkis and Nevis as Prime Minister. And there has been no discussion, insofar as the tripartite arrangement is concerned, about changing horses in relation to leadership. So I have heard a lot of hubbub in the media and a lot of speculation and people saying all kinds of things, but I can say that there's been no discussion at the party level about any change to the leadership that we currently enjoy. That is the leadership of Team Unity.
All right, go ahead.
So here's the major question.
No, the other questions were minor. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I'm right telling you.
To him.
That's what I'm telling you.
This is the one he's been waiting for.
Remember, I have been waiting to get you here to ask you the similar question.
I think so.
Now, the question is, if the current Prime Minister does not retain his seat, is it possible the people of St. Kitts Nevis can be looking at the next Prime Minister Premier right now? Will you take that? Will you take up that battle?
Well, I am from a school of thought which says, right, that the most dangerous thing that anybody can do is start to count chickens before they hatch. And I have resisted the temptation that many have offered to get into a discussion about what position you're going to hold and what position you're going to have. You know why I've resisted that is not because I am uncomfortable with the question, but because in my view, my focus right now has to be on winning seats. You cannot talk about what job you're going to have when your ability to have a job depends on the electorate putting you in that position. And so I have not paid any attention to all the chatter that I've seen about what position somebody's going to have, because that to me is counting a chicken before it has hatched. My role as a leader of CCM and my role as a politician on the island of Nevis is to go out and make the case every day to the people of Nevis and to indicate to them that we feel that we are the best team. Once we have persuaded them of that, then and only then could we have a discussion. And that discussion will depend in large measure on what happens in the general election, which none of us knows what will happen. People, pollsters are saying what they want to say.
So hold on, because no, there must be some form of contingency plan that says if the current leader does not retain his seat, someone has to take over. Because I don't think that you guys should wait until election day to say this. Because it's archery for we.
Well, but when you're going, yeah, but when you're going into an election, you go into an election with a leadership structure in place. And that current leadership structure has Prime Minister Dr. Timothy Harris at the helm. So you don't go in and say, but you know, if Harris don't win, then Sean gonna be Prime Minister, or Mark gonna be Prime Minister, or Eugene or Lindsay or whoever. Because that in and of itself is presumptuous, because who says that Mark or Sean is going to come back? The electorate may not find favor in us. That is why I'm saying you go in with a structure, but much of the discussion will have to depend on what the electorate says.
Okay.
So if the electorate, of course, returns us in the way that it did in 2015, then we expect continuity. If the electorate doesn't, the electorate may have a different view. So, you know, to engage in this discussion is, my mind, purely speculative. Ask me what I think I want to happen in Nevis, and I'm going to say, all three for we. That is what I want to happen. And thereafter, all across the board.
And Premier, I don't know why Reese is dancing around his question that he has been asking all the time.
I asked the question, can we see the Premier Prime Minister?
No, you asked it in a different way.
Because I have said, if Mark Brantley becomes Premier Prime Minister, there's a possibility that you could have the church of Mark Brantley open soon. Yeah,
but the real question that you want to ask him is, right?
Which one?
An hour right now. You're saying all three for we, right? And you going into the election, I'm pretty sure you are very confident in the all three for we, right? With the all three for we, if you do get the all three for we, will you now show your poker hand and make a step towards the prime ministership of St. Kitts and Nevis?
Well, again, my short answer to that is no, because we have a structure in place that we are working with and that we are committed to. But I don't know what that structure is going to reveal once the people have voted. When you're dealing with a coalition government, you depend on a lot of different things happening. So I can't sit here tonight and be a soothsayer and say, well, okay, here's what's going to happen. Lindsay going to win in number 4. Eugene going to win in number 8. Sean going to win in number 5. Tim going to win in number 7. And therefore, this is what's going to happen.
Okay. Well,
I'm simply saying that what I feel is within, what I feel we can do at this point is to focus on winning our seats. And that is where my laser-like focus is on. I am not getting distracted into chatter about position, because you can't get any position unless you're at the table.
Okay.
So I want to win our seats. And as I said, the current structure that is in place has a leader. And there has been no discussion and no decision to change that leader. So I don't see that as an issue.
Perfect. So we're going to wait. We're gonna wait till what? July, you answer?
August.
Well, it has to be by August, so we'll see.
You said before August. And is there any truth to that? Let's say the PAM party will be running a full set of candidates for all 8 seats in St. Kitts.
Forgive me, you broke up. You said, is there any truth to
that? The PAM party will be running a full set of candidates in St. Kitts for all 8 seats.
I have no indication of that.
Okay.
Again, my understanding is that PAM, CCM, and PLP are running as a unity construct. CCM is contesting its seats in Nevis. PLP is contesting whatever seats they're contesting, and PAM is contesting whatever seats they're contesting. Unless they have changed that in St. Kitts and haven't advised me, I am not aware that that has changed.
All right.
But again, I keep focus on Nevis. That is my focus. The people of St. Kitts will have to do what they need to do. I know what I need to do, and I will work towards accomplishing what I need to accomplish on the island of Nevis.
All right. We've been on for 2 hours. Reese, I don't know if you have anything else for the man.
Yeah, there's one question that we had from someone.
I'm still waiting for Reese. Big questions, you know.
But no, we wanted to know if you're going to take the chance, if you're going to say, I have R3. These are my cards. This is what I want.
You dance around it.
But it looked like you dance masquerade. Eh?
But I would tell you, man. I would tell you, Premier. I wouldn't want to play poker against you.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
There's
want
no
to.
need for poker. I just think you're not getting the answer you would like, but there's no need for poker.
I don't want to play poker against
The Premier look like you dance
I
masquerade.
tell you.
Listen, right now, the way the Premier batting, Lara scared. Eh? Lara think you record can break in Antigua. But here's a question. Premier. With the election around the corner, there will be large campaign gatherings. Is this going to be the same? Are feds going to be allowed during the campaign season as well?
Well, you see, that again is a very legitimate question, and one for which I do not have an answer tonight, because again, much will depend on what the health people are advising. If, for example, the health officials were to give us an all clear to say that they feel that COVID is gone from St. Kitts and Nevis, that there's no community spread, those who had it are now recovered, and so we are safe, then one could consider that assembling with each other, if you don't have it and I don't have it, then assembling with you is not a factor. So we will have to be guided by the health experts on questions such as those in terms of whether large gatherings are going to be allowed. The problem that we have is that we have now run into overtime, so to speak, in the sense that the parliament is going to dissolve shortly, and then we enter the constitutional 90 days where the election has to happen. We don't have the privilege of saying we have a year out so we can look at it. So we will need to know very quickly what the health position is, and as a consequence of that, where we go. If they give us the all clear, then I see, of course, the big meetings and things will happen. If they do not, then I suspect that a lot of the campaigning will have to be done virtually, where you'll have to be doing things such as what we're doing now, having virtual meetings, calling people on the phone, engaging with voters telephonically, because we won't be able to have the mass meetings. So I can't answer that question. I would have to wait and see what develops, but I believe that we must have the election when it has to happen, and so we'll have to be ready.
Do you think that your party is able to win solely on the ground?
Do I think what?
Your party is able to win solely on the ground?
Well, that's a strange question. We've been winning on the ground for years. You realize the NRP in Nevis has won one election since 1989?
Yeah, well, the NRP does not have a good track record. So
I'm just simply saying. If they've won one election since 1989, then clearly the CCM are winning elections on the ground. I hear a lot of chatter out there about you can't win unless they have overseas voters. Mm-hmm. And I am smiling when I hear that because it is true that the NRP have voters for CCM. That much is true. But the truth of the matter is that NRP has in the habit of chartering jets from New York and things. I never have that kind of money. So both sides in Nevis have brought in voters. And so far as I'm concerned, the overseas vote, which is an important vote because they are divisions, they cancel out each other. Elections are really won on the ground. So when I hear this chat, I smile to myself because if that is what some pundits are telling themselves, then so be it.
All right. Reese?
So Premier Brantley, we had Dr. Daly on his show previously, and he said that he would like to debate you. Is there any chance of a debate between you and Dr. Kelvin Daly at any point prior to the upcoming election?
And before you answer that, Honorable, I would like to say that I would love to see a political debate. And I would love to see our politics start to go in that direction as well, where we could see both candidates who are, presenting themselves for the job, a 5-year contract from the people, standing head to head with questions fielded from the Nivision public, on a neutral stage. I would love to see that. No, carry on.
Well, I hear you, and I am no stranger to debate, nor am I reluctant to engage in terms of the debate. But politics is also about the possible. Politics is about strategy. And I have taken a position that in my political life, I have created a particular political stage. I have created an audience. I have worked very hard at being able to reach out to people in a particular way. We have people who come along. I really don't know if they're politicians or they're just looking for a job. And they're making a whole ton of noise up and down the place. They now said to me, I want to climb onto your stage where people will notice me to make my case. Why should I allow that? Why should I give a strategic advantage to someone to climb onto my stage? Because as far as I'm concerned, in your terms, of your own that you've developed. There is no, in my view, legitimate interest in engaging in a debate, because what is there to debate, really? I mean, when I say that in terms of the rhetoric that we have heard, the constant, because what you get from the NRP now, with all due respect, is a constant barrage of cussing. You have a fixation on the personality of Mark Brantley. They talk about me. I mean, they wake up 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning. Then they say good morning to their wife. They post something about me. So you have this fixation. I'm saying, so what are we going to discuss? How to cure your fixation about the personality of Mark Brantley? Because I've yet to hear any ideas for Nevis. I've yet to hear any discussion about policy prescriptions for Nevis. So as far as I see it, there's no real legitimate requests for a debate, a political debate. What we find happening is that people want to get on my stage. They want to get noticed. And I'm saying, if you want a stage, go and build one for yourself. I built mine, you go and build your own. So that has been my response to that, because I think from a position of political strategy, that really what is an attempt to do is to get attention. Some people will do something to get attention because they want attention. And that, I think, is how I see this. Because I've not yet heard anything that in my view is coming from the other side that is worthy of a political debate, because I'm not going to be engaging in a cussing match with anybody. And so I am unsure as to what the other side is going to bring to a discussion.
Well,
that already brought.
I mean, of course, Dr. Kelvin Daly would like to get on a stage with you, maybe for more exposure, but I also think that the general population have been asking for a debate as well, not just your opponent,
Well, I don't know who's the general population, because I have not had any, the only person I've heard clamoring for a debate is those who are trying to get on a stage. I have not heard any of my people coming to me and say, Mr. Brantley, there's a need for you to engage in a debate. I say to people all the time, Ira and Reese, that I am the most accessible politician in St. Kitts Nevis, perhaps one of the most accessible in the region. For 14 years, I've had a show, 2 hours. where the lines are open, people can call it. Since this COVID pandemic, I've added another show on Sundays, for an hour and a half, 90 minutes.
Okay.
Every Thursday I have an open day where I can meet with people who come in to see me about whatever issues they may have.
Okay. So it would be left for the people.
I'm in the parliament. Where?
It would be left for the people to actually come and say, Honorable Premier, we'd love to see you in a political debate.
It will be a matter for them, but I'm also saying that I have sufficient exposure on radio, on interactive media, where if somebody wants an issue and they want to call in and say, listen, I'm challenging you on a particular issue. I don't agree with you on dialysis because of so-and-so. That they are absolutely free to do it. Many who are balling and say they want debate have never availed themselves of any of those opportunities. I've been on with you now for 2 hours. Have any of them saying they want a debate sent a question for you to ask?
I didn't see any in the comment section.
Okay.
Don't you think it would also be an opportunity for you to permanently dismantle the opposition?
Would it also be what? I'm sorry?
Wouldn't it also be an opportunity for you to permanently dismantle the opposition?
But they're dismantled already. What you want me to do? The people done dead, you want me to kill them again? I mean, I know some people have the view that you kill a man dead, but dead is dead, and NRP right now is dead. So, I mean, I don't know how much further you want me to go. Next thing you're on Reese now, start to charge me with murder. I don't want that.
No.
So, I leave the fellas, man. The fellas dead already. I'm not, and I know none of them named Lazarus. So I don't expect any of them to come back.
All right. So Premier Brantley, we're coming around to the end of the show. There's one question I want to ask you.
Yes.
Now, every month you have a press conference.
Yes.
And there's a former guest that we had on this show, Bian Hanley, that you allowed to come into your press conference every month. And you have some viral tips with you and Bian. Explain to us what goes on when you see Bian Hanley walk into the room.
Well, I welcome him. He says he's a young journalist. He has a company that he tries to use my press conference to promote. But, I'm a fan of small business, so I allow him to use the platform. But I think he looks forward to it because he asks his questions. He has got better because he used to come with some prepared questions that I suppose he got elsewhere. I find that in recent times he's doing a lot better because he's listening and asking questions based on what. But I think the public has looked forward to these exchanges. Bijan is always, I think, good fun because he asks his question, and no matter how many times you answer him, he asks it again, or he tell you haven't answered. So it leads to a little bit of comic relief, I suppose, that young people gravitate towards. And sometimes before the press conference is over, the memes have started and the clips have started. But I think it's an opportunity, the press conference, to engage and to say to the public what is happening and get questions from the press. I'm very proud of that because no Premier Nevis in the history has done that. And that was one of the things that we introduced in Nevis under my leadership, that we would have a monthly press conference. So Bijan is welcome and others are welcome as well to ask their questions, and we'll see how that goes.
So Premier Brantley, can Bijan get a trip to Dubai?
Well, he can, I'm sure, if he's able to do the necessary. He did declare himself as a candidate and then was pulled back by some others who said, no, he's not the candidate. So I don't know what's happening now because I saw him on social media recently saying he's done with politics. He's not in politics. I don't really know what that means. I'm sure that, he might be able to get a trip to Dubai, I see him in some videos talking to donkeys and sheep and goat. Dubai has camels. So I don't know who he's talking to when he gets there. But, Bijan is always good fun. It's always good fun.
All right, that's good. Have anything before we leave?
No, I think I've exhausted all my questions.
All right. So one more thing that you said here in the comments, and I want to know what you feel about it. A person said there is no longer an NRP party. NRP is dead, dead, dead. What do you think about that?
I have one. He just said that. Before you go on, he already done answer that question. I had one more. Someone had asked about a company that was supposed to do a deal with the airport, which they signed a contract.
Yes.
Can you tell us more about
that? Yeah, a company called BNL Worldwide. We had given them a contract of understanding to look at our airport to see how that airport could be expanded. They had provided a plan for a pretty aggressive and massive scale investment where they wanted to create this international airport as a hub on Nevis. I can tell you that we have been in recent discussions with them to indicate to them that we would want to revisit the plans to look at post-COVID, what we really want there at our airport. And so we are in discussions with them about looking at that plan to determine if that is the best way forward now, because we anticipate that global travel is going to go through some changes. And so we need to look realistically at that. But the company is BNL Worldwide, and it's a company that, yes, we are talking to and have been talking to about the airport.
All right. Clarice.
Well, I think I said everything I wanted to say. But with that being said, Brantley, before you leave, is there anything that you would like to say to the viewing public before you leave?
Well, I want to thank both of you for the opportunity. We've spent quite a bit of time together, I think over 2 hours, and I know your program is widely listened to. I want to apologize for not having been able to come earlier. I hope that you would have me on again. And perhaps when this COVID is over and we're more into the political season, I'd have an opportunity to reach your audience. But I want to thank you both for the opportunity. I have followed your show, and I think that it's an excellent opportunity. And I want to commend you both on what you're doing and, suggest that you continue in that vein. I think you're a good example of people in the diaspora who continue to contribute to what's happening at home. And that is why I'm so committed to nationals in the diaspora, that they should enjoy all the rights that Nevisians and Kitchens at home enjoy as well. And so I want to thank you both and to thank the members of your audience who would have tuned in. I had anticipated a bit more questions, but I'm happy that in the circumstance I was able to cover what it is you felt was necessary to cover. And I thank you for the opportunity.
Well, I just read that there are some questions in the comments. If you wish for us to peruse to those and ask you a few of those before you leave. I know you just gave your last.
As I said to you, I cleared my evening because I knew how important this show would be. So if you have questions, I'm here to answer them. If not, then obviously we'll sign off. But
okay, so I'm gonna ask anybody who wants.
I don't want you to say that you had questions for me that were not answered.
Yeah. So anyone that wants a question, please post it now, and we will ask it.
All right. So Premier, one question that came in is about your election promises and failing to fulfill those promises.
But what promises are those that we failed to fulfill? We have indicated when we ran that we would provide better governance, open governance, that we would govern for our people. We have committed to more transparent governance. I am very proud, gentlemen, that as Premier of Nevis, I was the first person to create and fund an office for the opposition. I was the first Premier to introduce a press conference monthly. I am accessible via radio because I'm there every Wednesday, God willing. I have passed, and not only passed, but operationalized integrity in public life. I led my team, cabinet members, was the first person in the history of this country to present a list of assets, my assets, to the Integrity Commission, and my members of cabinet did likewise. So I'm very proud of the things we have done. We now have the opposition having access to NTV. When I was in opposition, I couldn't go on NTV. The opposition in Nevis now has access to NTV, and they go on there, they do what they do, they say what they want to say. But we never had access when they were in government. So I think that in terms of transparency, in terms of good governance, we've done a tremendous job. And I am very proud, gentlemen, that under Van Samry starting in 2013 and continuing with me in 2017, we've not had a single scandal. And I want to say that again. We've not had a single scandal that has embroiled this government. And I'm very proud of that, because people tend to associate governments with some kind of bubble, and we have not engaged ourselves in that. We have land and housing, which has been under the stewardship of the Deputy Premier, the Honorable Alexis Jeffers, no problem. No allegations coming out of land and housing, which used to be the place where all kinds of allegations used to come. So I feel that on balance, when people say you have not done this or you have not done that, the question is, have we delivered the level of leadership that people in Nevis can be proud of? And I think the answer to that question is yes.
All right. Another question. In Taiwan get assistance?
The students in Taiwan get assistance?
Yeah.
Get assistance in terms of what you mean?
I'm guessing from this COVID-19 relief and stuff of that nature, where everyone getting assistance. Will they be getting assistance?
Well, remember the students in Taiwan are on full scholarship.
Okay.
So 100% of what they're doing in Taiwan is paid for. And Taiwan didn't close. Taiwan continued its classes and all of that as normal. So I don't know that any of our students in Taiwan should be in any difficulty. Of course, if there are those who might be in difficulty because you don't know everybody's personal situation, then we'd ask for them to reach out to us through our ambassador, Ambassador Huggins, who's in Taipei. But I would hope that they are all right because they are on full scholarships. The Taiwanese government pays for everything to have them there.
Okay. Why didn't you donate the dialysis machine to Sinkits?
Why what?
Didn't you donate the dialysis machines to Sinkits?
Well, that discussion never arose about any donation because we are hopeful, as I said, that in the fullness of time, we'll be able to have dialysis available on the island of Nevis. The dialysis situation in St. Kitts, as I understand it, was a joint venture where the equipment was provided by some entity and they partnered with the government. So they came already with their arrangement and Nevis was not part of that arrangement. So that discussion just never arose.
Okay. When will school reopen? Most servants have to go back to work next week. If that worker has no vacation days, no babysitter, who is going to watch the kids? That was another question.
Well, that question has already been answered because early on in this COVID-19 pandemic, my cabinet took a decision that public servants who had children who needed care, who were in daycare and the like, that on a case-by-case basis, once they made that case to their supervisor, their department head, we would facilitate them because we understand daycares are closed. Someone has to take care of our children. So we had said that no worker would be prejudiced, but they will have to come in and would have to speak to their supervisor or department head as the case might be. But anybody who's in that situation will be accommodated because as a government, we will not seek to prejudice our young mothers or young fathers, as the case may be, and particularly the young children, because we understand if you don't have daycare, you have no choice. You have to stay home and take care of your child.
Okay. All right. What are the plans to complete
that we have, in fact, the plans already for the stadium. The question was really the money, because I think that the quotations we saw were somewhere in the region of I think $7 million or thereabouts. We had anticipated that we would be able to do that particular project this year, but clearly we have now taken a decision that the majority of our infrastructural projects, what we call capital projects, that we'll have to put those on hold while we focus the limited resources we have on ensuring that our civil servants are paid and ensuring that the government keeps running. So we have basically taken a policy decision at this stage where we're going to put those big infrastructural projects on hold. We're going to try to finish the ones like the Craddock Road and the Brownhill Road that are near completion. And then we try to see how we can manage the limited resources we have so that our public servants aren't badly affected or worse affected by this COVID-19. We see in other countries they're talking about reducing public servants' pay. They're talking about layoffs and things of that nature. We are hoping that we don't get to that stage in Nevis. So we're trying to manage the resources we have carefully.
Okay. Can you also identify where the funding for the stimulus package came from?
Well, the Prime Minister announced his $120 million stimulus package, some of which would impact the island of Nevis, such as additional money for STEP, additional money for PAP, the Poverty Alleviation Program, programs with the Development Bank. But the stimulus that was announced in Nevis would come from the resources that Nevis has and our own revenue streams here on the island of Nevis. So when we talked about assistance for farmers, for example, that is being paid for by the NIA. When we talk about assistance for our fishers, paid for. And you would realize that a lot of what we have proposed in Nevis aren't injections of money. Rather, they are us foregoing revenue, which makes a difference because we didn't have large amounts of cash sitting down that we could inject. So what we sought to do instead was to forego. So we forego taxes on small businesses. Their unincorporated business tax was cut by 50%. We deferred taxes for companies. We engage in, as I said, assistance for farmers, assistance for fishers. We did things like a Nevlec, our electricity company, where we just forego some payments to give 50% reduction. Water department, same way. So these weren't injections of money. They were us saying that we will forego that revenue. So in a way, it didn't require us to put money of revenue. So I hope.
Did we think? What are some of the plans to increase airlift into Nevis?
Well, we just discussed about belt. As I said, whatever plans we had on airlift, we'll now have to revisit because we don't know what's going to happen in terms of airlift. We have just heard today, I saw the news that I think it was Virgin Atlantic has laid off thousands of people. American and those carriers are laying off people. We just do not know what airlift is going to look like. And so we have to await that. Insofar as Nevis is concerned, as I said, we are in discussions now to perhaps scale back that project that was anticipated for the airport and to create something which is perhaps smaller in scope. One of the things we have looked at is creating a private jet facility, which would largely accommodate private jet traffic and regional traffic, rather than the international airport that had been anticipated. A lot of that will depend on what the airline industry looks like post-COVID. And right now, we are not sure what that is going to look like. I anticipate that some of the airlines that we currently have may well not exist after COVID. We're already seeing in Europe places like Ryanair and all of those going through a tremendous amount of trouble. We're seeing BA saying they're not even sure if they're going to reopen at Gatwick. So things are changing, and I believe that we have to monitor very carefully and analyze where we go from here insofar as air traffic is concerned. But what our plan is at least to create a private jet facility at the Van Zandvoort International Airport to accommodate private jet traffic and accommodate regional traffic as well.
Okay, so one person asked, so does he have plans for the island to benefit medically from the 500 medical students learning in Nevis? Incentives to encourage some of the doctors to train and graduate out of that medical school to provide specialized care on the island. So there wasn't just one internist or pediatrician and no neonatal ologist, if I butcher that, my bad, radiologists for a population of 40,000 plus people. Hope you got all of that.
Well, first of all, you can't say a population of 40,000. we're talking about Nevis. On the island of Nevis, we have to be, how should I put it? We have to be realistic. You know, a lot of people when they talk about healthcare, they think that Nevis is supposed to have neurosurgeons available. We're supposed to have every specialization should be available on the island. And I recall having a conversation with a friend of mine who's a neurosurgeon. And he said that he could not be based on Nevis because Nevis simply doesn't have the population for a practice. So he's based elsewhere and he comes on a visiting basis and provides his service. So telling me that we need 2 internists and we need 4 radiologists and we need 6 surgeons and things of that nature ignores the reality of the size of the population and how we sustain those individuals. Remember, specialized doctors are more expensive because naturally they're highly specialized and they have to be paid for their skills. So how do we sustain that? We had a conversation some years ago about ambulance service, and people were comparing the US and saying we need to have an ambulance service where people are always at the ready. And I said, but how realistic is that? Because our ambulance is called out maybe once every few months. So are you going to pay a staff of ambulance personnel simply to sit down to get 1 call every 2 months? These are things that I think we have to understand when we talk. I was in a meeting recently and a lady made a very passionate argument that Nevis should have a second hospital. And I said, sounds interesting, but when you even look at the United States, Canada, countries that are well endowed, in some areas they have 1 hospital maybe serving 100,000 people. So how do you justify a second hospital on an island the size of Nevis? So all of these, I think, you know, we have to put some things in the category of what people might like to see. And then we have the reality of the situation and what we can realistically support.
Mm-hmm. Let's see how I could phrase this. When the last time you ran, you would have made some political promises. Where are we in completing all those political promises? How many of those have been completed? How many are still outstanding?
Well, I don't have a checklist with me, but I think that insofar as the good governance agenda is concerned, we have met those commitments. As I mentioned some earlier, integrity in public life, access to the media, creating an office for the opposition. All of those are things that we have done to create the type of Nevis that we would like to see. I think I promised a Nevis that was more inclusive. I believe we've established that. In fact, I get licks now from people in CCM who say that NRP people getting too much work, they're getting all the work. And so, you know, that goes back and forth. But I did say that we'd have 1 Nevis, and we have demonstrated that the politics that used to decide who got work and who didn't get work, that is now a thing of the past, and we are doing much better in that regard in Nevis. In terms of the economy, we have had some difficulty because, of course, my first full year was 2018. In 2019, we saw 4 months. In 2020, COVID intervened out of nowhere to destroy our prospects of a useful and beneficial 2020 season. So we have had some setbacks in that regard. But what I will say to the populace is that commitments made are over a 5-year term. And we're now really just 2 years and a little bit in to a 5-year term. So I believe we have ample time to deal with many of the commitments that we would have made, but we did prioritize things like the good governance agenda, and we took care of those very early.
All right.
Question coming in is about 4 Seasons, and the staff members at 4 Seasons are wondering what's going to happen if they are laid off and not rehired. Is there anything in place for them to either be paid out or can they go to Social Security?
Well, if they're laid off or not rehired, then the law takes over. They would be entitled to their severance payments. And that is a severance payment fund that exists. So I don't think that they should have a concern about that. Obviously, we would like any layoffs to be at an absolute minimum, but we have no control over that. The Four Seasons, I think, has been a good corporate partner. They have agreed to pay workers for March, April, and May, even though they didn't have any guests and the hotel was empty. And if, God forbids, there are layoffs, then our can be sure that the safety nets that are provided will be there for them. So they will be entitled to severance pay. They will be entitled to any assistance that is available from the government through social services and otherwise. They would be entitled to social security payments that might be due to them. And so our people would be entitled to those benefits. What my job is going to be is to generate activity on the island that people can find alternative employment. And that, I think, is what we are seeking to do. We are talking to people, and we are hopeful again post-COVID. We had some things that were supposed to happen, which couldn't happen. In matter of fact, we had a gentleman who was come to reopen the call center in Nevis, which was closed suddenly, and which had employed over 100 people. He was actually on the airport in Miami and had to turn back because he was told whilst on the airport that if he came here, he would be quarantined for 14 days. We continue to be in contact with people such as those, and we are optimistic that post-COVID, we will have an opportunity to re-engage. But everything has really come to a standstill because the world isn't moving, and we are focusing all of our attentions on keeping our people safe. Thereafter, we will have to decide what we do in terms of jobs and creation of jobs for people who might be displaced. It's not only Four Seasons. We have Mount Nevis, we have Montpelier, we have Hermitage, we have all these other hotels as well, where people would be displaced that we'd have to look at and see how we can help. My commitment to them is that this government has always been there for them, and we will continue to be there for them. When we say people matter most, is because that is not just a slogan for us, it's how we manage and how we govern. And so they can be assured that I and the government will be with them at every step of the way.
Okay. Continuing with the questions that are coming in. Another one on health. Are there plans to assist young doctors at home now to be able to specialize?
Well, in terms of that, we have always tried to assist doctors to specialize. Their scholarship opportunities are available. They avail themselves of that. We have also offered things like study leave with pay to some who would have gone away and to get specialized degrees. And so, absolutely, we are there to try and assist our medical fraternity to get specialist skills where necessary. I think the last internist that we had, she would have benefited from some arrangements such as that, where there was some assistance in terms of leave with pay, some portion of her salary, to assist her on the way to getting that specialization. So the short answer to that is yes, we are more than willing to assist young doctors. They simply have to come forward and interact with us.
And here's another question in keeping with what internist person has to be on call 24/7, 365 days. That promotes physician burnout. At some point, there will be no internists. Internists take care of adults.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The thing dropped for a while. You said something about an internist.
So the one internist means that that person has to be on call 24/7, 365 days of the year, right? That promotes physician burnout. At some point, there will be no internists. That internists take care of adults. There's a lot of adults in Nevis.
Yeah, I hear the argument, and I think that there is some validity to it. But again, that internist might be, as I say, on call 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. But how many times is the internist actually required to treat someone? So, saying that the internist is on call is one thing. We have a system in place now where St. Kitts and Nevis works together so that if, for example, we need somebody from St. Kitts, that person can be made available to us and vice versa. We have people who go on vacation. For example, sometimes our surgeons are out on holiday. We try to rotate to make sure somebody's always here to cover. But if not, we get assistance that comes in from Syncits. We've often gone overseas if necessary and brought in someone on short-term contract to fill the void. So we're dealing with those things. It is not something that is unusual in a small health system such as that. Make the necessary arrangements to ensure that we don't experience burnout and fatigue as is being suggested.
Okay.
Okay. What happened to the WIND scholarship?
What happened to the what?
Wind Song Scholarship.
There was never a Wind Song Scholarship. What had happened was something called a Wind Song Foundation had offered a significant sum of money. If I recall, it was $1 million or something like that, to education in Nevis during the NRP administration. That money was refused. They said they didn't want it. In fact, there were some NRP supporters who took to the media and accused the people of all kinds of, and said they didn't know if the money was from money laundering crime. After engaging with Nevis, they instead went and spent money in Anguilla. They built a school called I think it's called Omolulu School in Anguilla. They financed in a massive way the tennis academy in Anguilla. They have financed projects in St. Martin, music project in St. Lucia. They have spent money everywhere else but Nevis because their initial effort in Nevis was rejected. Since we have been in government, we have sought to re-engage with them. And so far, we were able to get some new school buses from them, which were donated by them for the island of Nevis. And we are in discussions now with them to get some additional education-related supplies and equipment. But the truth be told, that the money that they initially offered was turned down.
It was turned down. Okay.
Okay.
Are there any plans in place or still in place for persons laid off from work and government companies whose revenue structure has become depleted because of, I would think, because of the COVID-19?
If there's anything in place?
Yes.
Well, the Social Security program was put in place to provide some assistance. That's available to self-employed individuals. It's available to employees who would have laid off or had some reduction in their income. And I'm advised thus far, thousands of people have benefited from that program. We have other programs in place. I mentioned at the top of the show that, for example, we're doing this groceries program that we've introduced, funded by us, personal funds, not from the government. From the government point of view, the poverty alleviation program is there. We have continued to pay our workers. We have done things like reduce unincorporated business tax to ensure that the burden on companies is a little less. We have waived electricity. We have deferred payments. We have done all this to try and make it a little easier on companies, on businesses, particularly the small business sector. So I know that people are struggling. And one of the things we've also done is I was touting that was a plan that we had to put in place. Again, interrupted by COVID, but that had to do with the $5 million that we were hoping to promote for small businesses, particularly those owned by women and youth. A very innovative program where we would provide seed money to women and to youth under 35. Women of any age, young men under 35, who wanted to start a business. So we had to put pause on that, but that's another thing that we hope to jumpstart some small business activity on the island. So we're looking to see what we can do in the circumstances, but we understand that it's a difficult time for everyone and that there could be no guarantee that we're going to get back to where people were in the short term. I think this is going to be something where we will have to, hold hands and hearts and heads and work together. There's no magic wand that I could wave or anybody can wave right now, because we can't even look to other countries for assistance because everybody has been affected by this COVID-19. Okay, gentlemen, I think we've gone, what, 2 hours and 45 minutes or so.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that I've done my time. Mr. Reese, are you satisfied that I've answered your questions?
You have. I'll give it that. You definitely did answer the questions. I want to thank you for being here with us. We hopefully we'll see you again when the big blue machine comes out.
Yes, man.
And when those files are going to be released, we'd like to see you back here.
Well,
political season.
Well, you tell me if you want an exclusive, I could drop some files on this. What you call it? Real Talk Corner?
This is Real Talk Corner, and if you would like to drop files, feel free.
Well, when you're ready, we could drop some right here.
Say no more.
Because I'm going to come with some, I'm telling you, I'm coming with some statistics.
All right. Well, our platform is open to you, and whenever you feel like coming, let me know, and we will arrange it.
All right. Well, thank you both very much. It was a real pleasure interacting with you and with your many listeners. Mr. Willett, Mr. Trust, thank you. And please keep doing what you're doing. I'm very proud of both of you, and thank you for your contribution to Sync It's in News. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Blessings.
All right. Bless.
All right, guys, and here we have it. That was Premier Brantley. Came and said what he had to say.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, I'll be going over and listening to this one again to see what we missed. To everyone in the comments, guys, please understand that the comments are coming in very quickly.
Yeah.
We're also receiving texts. We're also receiving Facebook messages. There are a lot of messages coming in. Every message cannot be answered and every message is not seen. We are looking at the program, looking at phones, looking at computer screens. It's hard. So it's not that we mean to look over anyone's question. For that, we do apologize. We do apologize for that.
Yeah, we do. But all in all, we touched on health, we touched on the economy, we touched on quite a few topics. So I don't know what else was there to be. There was one more question that I would ask. I would have, but I would hold that until the next time. But
as he said, he's going to be back.
Yeah, he'll be back. So for the next time, if you're not pleased with the questions that we asked, we're just asking that you guys just field the questions earlier. You could inbox us, and we're delighted to ask every question, every single question that you guys have. We're here to ask them for you. And yes, like Reese explains, you look at the comment section and all you're seeing is a blur of words going up quickly. And from that, I did think that we did have a healthy discussion with the premier. And we on Real Talk Corner is not on a political manhunt. So our questions will not be coming from a political standpoint, nor are we trying to get any political agenda pushed. Our platform will remain open, and we have invited everyone from every party. We also invited the leader of the NRP party. That invitation still stands. Whenever he is ready to come, we are here. We will have a discussion. And likewise, if there's any questions you have for him, please field those questions early. Reese?
Hey, to everyone that is all our regular viewers, we want to thank you guys for being here with us. It's running on 3 hours. To those of you guys that are first-time viewers, we ask you to like and follow the page, and just go back and you can look at other interviews, some great content back there. There was an interview with Dr. Daly. Dr. Daly had a great interview as well. We have a few entertainment interviews that we have done. So we just thank you guys for your support. Thank you for your love. And with that being said, guys, blessings. Good night.
And thank you for all of you guys who listen time and time again. We're usually here on a Wednesday night, and we're just going to say, no, we're not going to be here tomorrow night.
No.
we're not going to be here tomorrow night. Tomorrow's show will not happen. So thank you guys for tuning in with us. I have to say thank you to my wife. She's patient. I know she wants me to now come. So good night, everyone. And this is Real Talk, and it has been real.
We on the corner, man. We on the corner, man. We on the corner, man. With that real talk. We on the corner, man. With that real talk, real talk, real talk, real talk. Real talk, real talk.